you don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Dead up perfect in the kid. Got a billion who take on my hate. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Deku Finds Dannyphantom in MHA. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of RusEmp on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. It had to be some kind of mistake, Danny thought. There wasn't any discernible reason to make that choice. How could he? A person that couldn't even tie a piece of fabric around his neck be entrusted with the duty of a class representative. The halfer remained dumbfounded even as he was asked to stand in front of the class in all of his unkempt glory. It had to be some sort of a mistake. The choice of a deputy representative, however, was even more shocking for the person chosen for that person. If Danny remained blank and confused, Midoriya seemed outright shaken by having to be a part of it. Out of all the classmates, the two most reluctant individuals were elected. The fate really loathed the half-ghost. "Why in the world did you vote for me?" Danny asked with a muffled voice, his face on the lunch table. "Well," Kirishima started, "we would have liked to vote for ourselves, but jokes aside, I think you can manage, Danny-san." The half turned his head so that he was now lying on the side of it. "And what for the love of the ancients gave you that idea?" "Come on, Danny-kun," Mina nudged him. "You know why it's like that. When it comes to hero stuff, you are a #1 student." "Yep," added Kirishima. "I mean, we saw how you did in the battle trial, and you know how a hero should act." Fenton sighed. "You missed the part about me preferring to do things alone. Precisely why I didn't vote for Todoroki. Come on, you are not always by yourself, right?" Danny seemed to be in thought. Kirishima was correct that his friends were there quite often, willing to lend their hand or save his backside in a pinch. However, he stood by his word, and the half still was choosing to fight alone if he could help it. His power had grown over the months of constant fighting. He could manage. Maybe. But do you honestly expect me to be responsible enough to keep up with everything and everyone else? Do you want this? He pointed at his all-over-the-place clothes, to represent you during the meetings. Don't be so harsh on yourself, Danny-kun, Mina beamed. I'm sure you will do your best. The half didn't look convinced. Instead, Danny decided to casually indulge in the delicious foods of which he had taken plenty. After downing the first bowl of judon, the half-ghost took a look around the cafeteria. "There are a lot of people here," he commented. "You only just noticed." Mina cackled. "We just study in the different parts of the school, but there is only one cafeteria. So, there are guys from all departments." "How many of those they have exactly?" asked Fenton and made a sip of the soda. "I only know a couple." "Well, there's ours." Kirishima started counting with his fingers. "The hero course. There are also general education, support department, and department of management." "Management?" Danny raised an eyebrow. "Well, most heroes have their agencies," explained Mina. "They are in charge of your PR, make sure that you get the jobs, and are also good for managing finances. You need the money to repair what's damaged during the fight. Manage some ads, too. That's what management department teaches." Christ, they turned heroism into Hollywood, Danny mumbled as he chewed on a bun. "You have a marketable plushie of yourself in your bedroom." The inner voice reminded him and promptly shut him up. It would be a lie if he said he didn't want the kind of fame most prominent heroes had, but the specifics of that new world still felt wrong to him. He had been bitten so many times by his desire to be respected by his peers and have hundreds of fans among the populace, that by then Danny had grown wary of the idea, no matter how much he might have potentially enjoyed it. It was somewhat of a guilty pleasure at that point. "Well, it's not like you can't do both," Kirishima shrugged. "If you are still manly and noble enough, why not make some cash out of it?" "That's not what I am used to." "Why?" asked Mina. "You have heroes in America, too. They are everywhere. America is not Japan. It is an enormous country with so many heroes. Our town had only one unsung vigilante, and that's pretty much it," Danny responded unenthusiastically. "Don't you see this as a problem? Even if one hero is to prevent 10, 20 crimes a day, it still won't be enough. Schools can't possibly pump out enough heroes, and hardly all of them are on par with the top brass, obviously." "Danny, are you defending vigilantism? My town is still standing because of one. People close to me are alive because of him. I can't bring myself to think that this is wrong in any way." "Having second thoughts about your pick of a class rep?" Danny asked sarcastically and grinned. Then, before he could say anything else, the deafening siren sounded across the entire school. A level 3 security breach is detected, the robotic voice announced through the speakers. All students please evacuate properly. Danny stood up without even noticing. The gears in his mind set in motion. Was that it? The villain's attack on the school? No, the Halfa reasoned. The two of them did not appear moronic enough to try and assault the school like that. No matter what tools they had, the school was the hero's territory, easily defensible and full of capable superpowered individuals. His hearing didn't pick up any explosions or crashes, although the white noise in the form of shouts and cries of panicking students was hampering his ability to pick anything else up. Thus, this could not be an actual attack. Perhaps it was the distraction Danny had been expecting. The Halfa was about to bolt for the principal's office and the archive so conveniently located nearby. But then he remembered something. Looking at his shocked classmates, Danny realized that he couldn't just abandon those who put their trust into him. He didn't know what that distraction was, and with Kurogiri's quirk the villains could attack any stray student. The time was running short. Jumping into the air, the half-ghost floated above everyone and casted a look across the entire cafeteria. Danny then put his hands to his mouth and channeled a portion of his ectoplasmic energy to his throat. Hero Course, Class 1A, gather near this table, he bellowed. Considering the stampede that closely resembled the dreaded episode of The Lion King and was currently taking place in the only exit corridor, there wasn't much the class was missing. They weren't getting anywhere close to the exit in such conditions anyhow. At least that way he would make sure that every classmate of his was alright, and they could leave in an orderly fashion. The class did as instructed. Having heard his shout and having seen his floating figure, they had no trouble gathering close to each other. Danny slowly descended, counting the students that were there. Is this everyone that was in the cafeteria? He asked and descended. Mine has already run off. Kiro, Sue responded and saw the Halfa lower his head. For the love of, I also don't see that blonde guy. What was his name again? You mean Ayama? Asked Tokoyami. Yeah, the sparkling one. He said he was going to the library. Danny had studied the layout of the school. Due to the library's proximity to the principal's office and the archive, this was probably the worst spot for him to be. Phantom was careful not to display the true emotion he was currently experiencing, which was deep concern for his classmate. Humming for a moment, Danny casted a glance at Midoriya, his supposed deputy. Yes, that could work as an excuse too. Midoriya-san, you lead the others to the shelter. Make sure you stay together. What about you, Fenton-san? Asked Ida. I'll try and get Ayama. When I find him, we'll join you. What? You want to face the bad guys alone? Glowstick. Bakugou barked. Danny shot him an apathetic look. Last time I checked it was me who went through walls and could fly. I have the best chances in this whole school to get there quickly and get Ayama and others to safety, he said and took off the suit that was part of his uniform, leaving only the shirt. Well, go. We've already wasted enough time. Everyone exchanged glances. They were unused to hearing orders from the usually laid-back Halfa, but his cool head and confidence seemed to be enough for them to follow his orders. While the students quickly ran off towards the corridor, Danny didn't waste another second before dashing towards the nearest wall and leaping through it, landing on the other side already in his ghost form. From there he flew upwards, as it was there where the points of his current interest were. Danny prepared himself for any emergency that could happen. At the very least, he would make sure that the fight would be very loud and noticeable. Was it the rule violation if he actually did engage in a fight with a villain? It could technically be considered an act of self-defense as long as they were attacking the school. Reassured by his impunity, Danny quickly headed towards the upper walls. He phased through another ceiling and landed in another corridor. From there he sprinted towards the library, making it there in a matter of seconds. He swung open the door and entered the spacious room. Rows of bookshelves and not a single living soul around. They must have heard the alarm. Of course they would be on their way to the shelter. Danny facepalmed. There were no villains in sight either, which was probably a good sign, too. Well, he said upon exiting the library, since I'm already here, I might as well check the rest. After taking a peek inside every room around, he heard some sounds coming from the one he hadn't checked yet. Someone seemed to be in a hurry. The fact that that particular door had faculty room written on it made Danny stop in his tracks. The Halfa remembered that the villains were after the teachers' schedules, wishing to know where and when All Might would be. Of course a copy would be in the faculty room, and it would lack in defenses with how many heroes there were inside usually. The Halfa turned invisible just in case, before floating right through the nearest wall. There, in a room filled with littered desks, one person was eager to bring even more chaos to the surroundings. And that was not a teacher. In fact, it was the particular blonde Danny had been looking for. It was Ayama, who was digging through the desk drawers, with a goal Phantom didn't want to accept, but apparently would have to. But maybe he was jumping to conclusions, right? He had to check, and do so quickly, because Ayama finally found what he had been looking for. "What are you doing?" asked the half-ghost. Ayama shrieked and jumped upon hearing someone whisper into his ear. Turning around, he saw Danny staring at him. In the meantime, the half saw the blonde hide something behind his back. Fenton-san, Ayama exclaimed shakily. What are you doing here? He couldn't understand why the half-ghost was reacting in such a manner. Ayama saw hostility in those emerald eyes, and it made his legs go wobbly. "Are you really in a position to ask?" Fenton tilted his head. "I am the class rep now. My job is to keep your asses intact, among other things. So I was looking for you." "Well, the shelter is far away, right?" Ayama responded. "I was thinking of hiding in the faculty office, but there is nobody here." Danny sighed. "A valid course of action, I guess," he said, and Ayama for a second thought he was off the hook. "But this doesn't explain you rummaging through the desks," the half-ghost finished. "What's that you have there?" Oh, that's just a schedule." The fellow student showed him the piece of paper. If Phantom's core was beating, it would have ceased such activity for a moment. Ayama was showing that list like nothing, because it was nothing to the normal observer. However, why would he try and hide it in the first place if it was perfectly normal? "Why do you need it?" the Haffa asked as the sirens outside finally fell silent. "What are you asking such questions for?" The blonde suddenly grew a backbone. He knew his time was running out, Danny realized. The teachers were probably going to be there soon. "Because this is hardly the time." Simple as, the Haffa responded. He also knew that if the teachers came, it would throw a wrench into his plans as well. He couldn't interrogate Ayama in front of everyone. And to be frank, he could not allow himself to be hasty. One wrong word could potentially pull the rug from under the Haffa's legs. If Phantom made his accusations clear, Ayama could do something people usually did: speak not only to him, but either to the teachers about the class rep's odd suspicions, or to the villainous employers, on the same topic but with different content. Danny could not allow such questions, because he so far had no idea how to respond to them. For now he had to play it safe, until he knew what to do with him. Why did it have to grow so convoluted this quickly? Danny eventually sighed. "Alright, let's just hurry to the classroom. Everyone must be worried." Ayama did not say anything, internally glad that that's where Fenton had chosen to drop it, even if temporarily. However, as he followed his now human classmate, Ayama was starting to fear that the half-ghost knew more than he was letting on. To bear with that fright until Phantom chose to speak to him again about it, if ever, was going to be torturous. At the very least, Danny hadn't taken the paper back. And why didn't he? That was also the question Ayama had. It would also be a lie to say that Danny's own soul felt at ease. Perchance, the Haffa had caught his own classmate red-handed. He knew he had, but at the same time doubt plagued his mind. Perhaps he was overthinking it, but the evidence was all there. Danny knew that the villains needed to attain that information. He knew that there wasn't anybody else in close vicinity of the 3 important rooms. The whole distraction thing would be for naught if they hadn't had a guy on the inside. And the only person there was Ayama. It couldn't be a mere coincidence. Soon they heard the next message relayed through the speakers, telling the students to proceed with the rest of the day as normal. With nothing else to do at the moment, the Haffa decided to head to the classroom. Ayama had no choice but to follow. Upon entering, Danny saw the entirety of the class being present there and eagerly chatting, and he felt his anger subsiding. "Danny-kun," Nina waved at him, getting everyone's attention to the doorway. "Everyone all right?" asked the Haffa. "You bet," said Kaminari. It turned out that the alarm was triggered because of the press. "The press?" Danny repeated slowly, glancing at Ayama, who looked probably too elated by the electricity-throwing teen's response. Was he wrong about everything? If it was the paparazzi all along, then it was him who acted like a prick. It did not completely eradicate the doubt, but the Haffa was starting to feel consciousness gnawing on him. "Fenton-san." Danny turned to look at Midoriya, who looked awfully anxious about something. "What's up?" the Haffa asked with a small, tired smile. He welcomed the distraction. "I have an announcement to make, if nobody minds." Danny turned to Aizawa, who was still lying in his futon behind the desk. "I don't care what you do, just make it quick. You kids still have to make other decisions on the class officers." "Oh, that's right. Well, the floor is yours, pal." Phantom smirked and gestured to the wooden rostrum. Midoriya slowly made his way there as Danny followed. He had to constantly remind himself that he was the class president. The feeling was still new to the half-ghost. Standing by Midoriya's side, he leaned against the chalkboard behind him. "I think it is more suitable to be in my position after all." Danny blinked. That was awfully sudden. But looking at the class, the half-a noticed that there were very few surprised faces. What did I miss? Fenton asked half-jokingly. A lot, ma'am, Kirishima responded. Ida was a great help at the cafeteria today. He kinda looked like that man from the exit signs, Kaminari cackled. Danny raised an eyebrow. The heck? Ida slowly rose from his seat. If it is Midoriya that is making this proposal, then I will humbly accept it as long as the class representative has no objections, he said and raised his hands. Wait, Danny said slowly. You could just switch positions all this time. If so, I know what you are suggesting, Fenton-san, Ida interrupted firmly. I must refuse, and I am confident that many others do too. During the commotion you acted with cold head and rationality expected of someone in your position. With all due respect, I won't accept you stepping down. Hey, Danny rubbed the back of his neck and averted the gaze. Thanks, there wasn't much he could say in a situation like that. He initially acted without thinking, doing what had been drilled into him by mock evacuations they had at Casper High, and his past unpleasant experiences with panicking crowds. Is this how he says it is? Danny turned to the class. Yep, you can pull this off, Danny-kun. Nina gave him a thumbs up. Don't back out on us now. After receiving some more words of encouragement, the half-a had to concede. Perhaps ... it was for the better in some aspects, Danny decided. Everything that had taken place in the last hour or so was the clear indication of who was the real worrywart among the entire group of students. A worrywart in a sense that he was truly concerned about everyone's safety, even if it meant suspecting one of them. The position of a class representative was the one that put a weighty responsibility on his deceptively weak-looking shoulders, but it was also the one that would allow him to exercise the much-needed authority when it came to the crisis situations, as Danny and anybody else could see in the cafeteria. Once again he was being made to accept something ex post facto. By accepting and embracing the role others wanted him to take, what was he really doing? Was he simply coming to terms with the inevitable, or he simply refused to argue because he was actually the one deciding it? The half-a could not give an answer to that question just yet. However, everyone expected him, and him alone, to say something. I suppose I can bear with it a bit, Danny smirked. I'll stay as the class representative, and I am all for the change Midoriya proposed. No offense, pal. None taken. Midoriya grinned. It's my idea anyway. Danny took another breath. In the end, he guessed he could roll with his sudden responsibility, as long as there was someone capable of aiding him in whatever bureaucratic nonsense they would have to endure. Speaking of such nonsense, we still have to decide on certain positions, so let's be quick. Anyone wants to be the treasurer. Phantom's line of thought when it came to the ongoing conspiracy was simple. There was a very simple way of knowing what everything was about. The solution: to watch where Ayama was going and what he was going to do with his papers. Danny reasoned that with him evidently suspecting Ayama of something out of norm would make the pompous blonde nervous and eager to get rid of what he had stolen. It was how all overly cautious thieves behaved. Before the lessons were over, Aizawa had the teen go and sign a couple of papers so that he would be registered as the official class rep. Since the last lesson was not Aizawa's, the homeroom teacher accompanied him, and whilst traveling through the empty and quiet corridors, Danny felt slightly uncomfortable. I've heard of what you did in the cafeteria. The half-a panicked for a moment, but then realized that he hadn't done anything out of ordinary. Aizawa turned his tired red eyes to the teen. Keep at it. Danny blinked. The compliment had caught him off guard. He rubbed the back of his neck. Thank you. The teacher sighed, feeling the need to elaborate. I've been told about how you behaved and I heard what your classmates said. Several faculty members noticed that class proceeded according to the procedures and in order. You did a good job, he nodded. So if I say so myself, it is an improvement. An improvement from what? Danny raised his eyebrow. From the initial impression I had, Aizawa responded frankly and without missing a heartbeat. Despite having been a vigilante, you show that you can work as a part of the team. Forgot you guys knew that. Danny looked out of the window before noticing something. He was able to see the front gates from their position, and what he saw made his mind return to another matter entirely. He saw the front gates reduced to nothing, with the remains showing the signs of someone actually forcing their way in. What is it? Asked Aizawa. Are ... you really sure that it was the journalists? Danny said. This doesn't seem like their work. That was his way of indirectly warning the teacher about the upcoming threat. At least they would stay on guard. We can't know that. All it takes is one quirk sometimes. But even the paparazzi have limits. They don't turn metal doors to dust. Aizawa couldn't deny that the half-a had a solid point. Neither he nor the others among the staff had any illusions. They had told the kids the opposite for the sole reason of preventing concern and panic. Heroes in training they might have been, but to their mind many of them were not ready to be exposed to real threats. Observant, aren't we? Aizawa mumbled tiredly. You guys know what I did in the past. Danny rolled his eyes. I learned to perform basic investigation. Your experience will only get you this far, Fenton. The teacher spoke seriously. You may have an advantage over classmates, other students, and some rookie heroes, but many of us spent years and even decades in the field. What are you trying to say, Sensei? I say that you must work just as hard as everyone else. You yourself admit that your investigation skills are basic. Learn to perfect it and keep going. I simply keep sensing that you aren't enthusiastic about my lessons, or others from the hero course for that matter. You are diverting the conversation, Aizawa-san. Was I wrong about the journalists? The man kept silent for a while, as a pair of ice blue eyes unnervingly stared at him without blinking. You are not going to believe me if I say otherwise. One could even say that I can read people enough. Danny grinned, before his look turned serious. So it was a villain. He had no doubts about that, knowing full well about someone who could pull the distraction off. Danny simply wanted his teacher to wholeheartedly share his sentiment. Don't go around saying this version to everyone. We have no concrete proof, not even an eyewitness. Never planned to, sir. But what are you going to do? We must first learn if it really was a villain. Until then, we will stay on guard. I expect this level of responsibility you've shown today from now on, Fenton. And I hope that your urge to break the law is subdued. Is it against the law trying to find out what happened here? Not really, Aizawa responded sincerely. But this is what I told you and what I threatened to expel you for. Danny's eyes widened. You really aren't shy with measures. The half mumbled. Phantom already had found the truth in the culprits. The destroyed door also eroded any suspicion that he might have been mistaken. But the whole fact that they didn't want to even hear of what he found, much less accept it and forgive his missteps, annoyed the young hero beyond measure. That attitude was going to get someone killed. Danny was slowly starting to hate the secretiveness of his endeavor, and even more so the people so entrenched in their conceptions of vigilantism that they refused help when they could get it. You are smart enough to understand why I am doing this, Fenton. Aizawa stopped and turned to him. My job is to make sure that students remain safe. And that includes you, too. I fought the people you guys can't even scratch, Danny said through his teeth. I can handle myself. I'll believe it when I see it, Aizawa said firmly. Until then, the ban remains in place. Plans never work, Aizawa-sensei. What if villains choose to attack the students? I, for one, would feel guilty if there was anything I could do to stop it from happening outright. This is a you problem, Fenton. We are working on this as we can. You have to trust us on that. Because this feeling is obviously being reciprocated. Danny responded sarcastically. Since he knew better than to speak too frankly with a teacher, he promptly added, Fine, I get it. Fast forward a bit later to the end of the lessons, when the Haffa did not hesitate to go against what he had told Aizawa. Technically, it was not a full-fledged investigation, as he probably knew the culprits already. He was merely confirming his findings. It was, however, much more boring than Danny had anticipated. All he did was invisibly tail Ayama until something happened. Until the guy reached a meeting spot with the villains or reached his house and put the Haffa's mind a bit more at ease. From observing the blonde whilst Phantom invisibly floated in front of his face, Danny could see the nervousness, the wobbly hands, the expression full of concern. The signs were all there and they indicated that something clearly wasn't right. The Haffa wasn't the most patient person. He opted to fly home because it was much faster. Commuting was not something he enjoyed, and Ayama was doing just that, forcing Danny to follow him in the bus. The Haffa feared that he would have to go with the suspect even further, by metro. But surprisingly Ayama opted to detract from the path Danny had predicted, and instead went the opposite way from the station. And finally, the student entered a very unimpressive establishment. If he chose to buy himself a bagel, I'm hanging myself, Danny thought with exasperation at a possibly wasted time. Can I even choke in this form? Shaking off that thought, Danny floated inside the cafe. The place really was run down, and that was especially striking in a place not so far from a city center. Ayama had by then situated on his seat, in front of another person. You are late, the man said from under the black hoodie. That voice, Shigaraki, you weasel, Danny whispered inaudibly, sitting at the nearest table behind Ayama. Still invisible, of course. He was right all along, and he was not sure whether to be thrilled, appalled or concerned. What he knew, however, was that he had to listen. Sorry, I was held back in school, Ayama responded, visibly scared of the man he was talking to. Was this because someone wasn't careful? Shigaraki looked at the student, tapping on the table. No, look. Here is what you asked for. Ayama quickly dug in his bag and fished out the file Danny had seen him take. Is it safe for us to discuss this here? Don't worry, Shigaraki gave a wicked smirk. The proprietor is a kindred spirit of yours. He isn't going to tell anyone about this exchange. Danny glanced at the only man at the counter and saw the distress plastered on his face. That didn't look like a person that was in it willingly. And neither was Ayama. Something was amiss in the picture. Was his classmate threatened to do this? Now, the smirk vanished. You haven't answered my question. There is no skipping this dialogue. There's one classmate, and he saw me take it. Shigaraki swiftly grabbed Ayama's hand in a strange, four-fingered grip, making the student yelp in shock and fright. What happened next? He didn't do anything. Ayama quickly added, nobody but him knows, and he paid it almost no attention. That was awfully close, Shigaraki whispered, not letting go. You needed a distraction, I gave you a distraction. It's you who almost failed. I know, but Fenton is our class rep. He came looking for me personally, there's nothing I could do. After a momentary silence, during which Danny fully prepared to blast the hobo-looking villain to crisp, Shigaraki finally released his grip. Sensei would not approve of me destroying his asset, he mumbled. But he is not going to be happy with you either. You got the paper, now scram. Do I have to do something else? Meanwhile, Danny floated closer, wishing to take a look at the schedule as well. You stay put and don't call attention to yourself. Don't think that your debt is repaid, either. Master will surely contact you, and you will get another quest, Shigaraki cackled, folding the list of paper and stuffing it into the pocket of his hoodie. Ayama did not hesitate to leave the place with the opportunity he was given, and Phantom had half a mind to beat the bastard in front of him here and then, certainly having the ability to. But then it would lead to unpredictable consequences, and perhaps even Ayama was going to be blamed for everything. From that brief conversation, the halfer realized that the blonde was not a willing co-conspirator, and thus the boy regained some sympathy. Being manipulated by a villain ... he knew that feeling perhaps too well, which did not mean that in the following days he would not try and stop them. First, he needed to find an information on the rescue training event. It was something that took place in a location Danny so far had no idea of. Finding the information wasn't that hard, since it was not some kind of a classified data. He could simply ask the older students from his course, and results it did bring. Upon learning of what the special training course entailed, the Haffa started hatching another scheme. It was taking place in a separate building, and thus was a perfect spot for the attack. The villains would not have to fight all the heroes if the latter would remain oblivious to the ongoing battle. Cut the connection, and the place would also be one big grave. It seemed to fall so perfectly in place that the Haffa had no doubts about the location of the villain attack. Once more the stupid problem of having nobody to report to was biting him in the backside. Any attempt to inform the authorities was going to end poorly for him. And, as he had learned, for Ayama, the blonde was quiet after the exchange in the faculty office, not wishing to even interact further with the half-ghost. Due to fear of villain's retribution or Danny's own intrusive approach, Phantom did not know, but there was the fact Ayama avoided him as much as possible. And everything had to appear absolutely natural so as not to alert the villains or heroes about the scheme of one particular half-ghost. Thus, Danny did not press him. Jiren never made contact with him after the meeting with Shigaraki, so apparently the villains chose to drop it and not to ask someone clearly opposed to the plan without having the leverage over him, especially since they got what they wanted in the form of Ayama. Danny meticulously prepared a multitude of gadgets, created for the purpose of stopping a small army of cutthroats. He was the only one who knew about the attack. The responsibility to protect his classmates pressed on him, but at the same time, the Haffa felt excited. The ice shard in place of his heart buzzed softly, creating a feeling similar to the butterflies in the stomach. He acted accordingly to his ghostly core's desires, and it was understandably happy with such outcome. The term happy was, of course, applied liberally, for it never had a sentience of its own. Danny knew not of what obsession was, scientifically speaking. His parents had attributed the increased power output to the creation of special hormones at certain moments, when the ghosts indulged in what they were obsessed about. His parents had scraped the idea, because for hormones to have effect one had to possess a brain and nervous system, something they believed ghosts seldom had. Maybe those were hormones. Fentons were known to be wrong with their assumptions a lot. Danny could only hope they did not cause extra acne for him. And then, the day of the event rolled about. At least, that's what the schedule said. And the Haffa waited with bated breath and deep concentration until that moment arrived. Right after lunch they had a lesson with Aizawa, and the man did not waste his time. For today's basic hero training course you will have 3 instructors, All Might, me and one more person. Excuse me. Zero raised his hand. What exactly will we be doing? Aizawa lazily lifted a card similar to the one All Might had shown before the battle trial. Only that time the card read rescue, and like always Aizawa didn't seem to express any strong emotions like his boisterous colleague. Disasters, shipwrecks, everything in between. Today you will undergo rescue training. Danny had learned of this beforehand, certainly, but he still couldn't help but chuckle into his fist at the irony of the predicament they were in. The course made sense, certainly, as a hero had to know how to perform a rescue mission. It was always a large part of being one. Phantom was no stranger to such things, be it a bus that fell off into the lake from the bridge or anything of the sort. But now, however, he was preparing to perform a different type of operation. The half glanced at Ayama, who must have felt Phantom's piercing gaze, because he soon turned around and their looks crossed. The nervousness of the blonde teen was difficult to hide from the half-ghost. Whether Ayama intended to fight the classmates or not, Danny had long since come to terms with the possibility of the former. Still, Danny supposed that the villains would not want to throw away their valuable mole so early. "I'm not done yet." Aizawa eventually stopped the excited chatter. "You are free to choose whether to wear your costumes or not. After all, some of them limit your quirks, too." Danny slowly and instinctively rubbed the back of his palms, where his newest contraptions were located during the fights. Yes, he was definitely using those. "The training will take place off campus, so we will take the bus. Start getting ready and gather near the front entrance." With that Aizawa parted, trusting the students to do the rest. At Ida's urging, the half less than enthusiastically once again assumed the role of the class rep, making sure that everyone proceeded in a proper fashion first to the changing rooms and then to the entrance. Phantom began to wonder if he was there to be a chaperone. Nonetheless, the job was simple, so he managed to do that much. Once everyone gathered outside, the students could see the bus waiting for them. "We must proceed further in a proper fashion," Ida commented loudly, evidently more fired up than Danny was. "Ease up, pal." Danny patted Ida on the shoulder. "Just look inside, there's enough space to run a marathon." The deputy rep did as he was asked and finally noticed the disposition of the seats, along the walls, facing each other. "Oh, I see. I just assumed it was a normal bus. Looks like they are trying to accommodate everyone." Phantom smirked. "Although I'd have loved to see how bakugou would have fit with those gloves of his," he cackled alongside some of his classmates. "What did you just say?" Bakugou roared. "That your gloves are way too large," Danny shrugged. "Keep talking like that and I'll show you what they can do," the tempestuous teen growled. "I'll keep that in mind," Danny responded offhandedly. "Come on, everyone, we don't have the time to lose." The half is situated by Ida, with Ayama simply having no other place to take, and his discomfort at being so close to the half was eventually noticed. "Is something wrong, Ayama?" asked Sue. "Oh, I assure it's nothing of concern to you." The blonde waved off the concern in his usual fashion. Danny had to give the boy some credit. He was extremely good at acting as a dapper narcissist. Or maybe it was just who he actually was. "You've been acting weird around Danny-kun ever since the lunch incident." And the frog girl was awfully observant, Danny mentally cursed. He needed to change the topic, and quickly. How did it come to him hiding the actual mole? Right, it would mean him being busted, too. "Sheesh, Sue," Danny huffed and smiled, putting hands behind his head, crossing his legs and leaning backwards in his seat. "You really say what you think, huh?" "That's right, Kiro. I also think your quirk is strange, Danny-kun." Internally glad that the bait was taken so easily, he was nonetheless surprised to hear her words. Before he could answer, the one who was the most enthusiastic about quirks butted into the conversation. "That's right. I have never seen a quirk so versatile before," Midoriya spoke up. "You must have spent years coming up with all those uses." "Not really. My quirk was a late bloomer. Got it about a year ago. And when it did awaken, it was unpleasant." "A year?" The exclamation of surprise sounded from perhaps everyone around but Midoriya, who himself received his quirk not so long ago. Yet, it shocked even the green-haired boy how quickly the Haffa got a hold of that power. Aizawa, who had been occupying the front seat by the robot driver, looked over his shoulder and stared at the Haffa, too. Just 1 year to become a powerhouse like that. The teacher sighed tiredly and rubbed his eyes. He really could use a drink right now. "What do you mean, unpleasant, Danny-kun?" Mina tilted her head. "You never told us this." The Haffa hissed. "I ate a huge shit pie in the form of multiple layers of pain. I would have died horribly, because a normal human body cannot sustain that much energy coursing through the body at once. But my healing factor kicked in just when I needed it. I'll omit the gruesome details." Midoriya stared at him with wide eyes. He couldn't help but draw the parallels with himself, and how every use of one for all made his limbs break. "How bad was it?" asked Kirishima with concern. "You really have to press, don't you?" "My skin was literally melting off." Danny looked at the distance. "My friends had to watch that whole thing. Ectoplasm doesn't like organic matter at all. Even when your heart all of a sudden begins to pump it through your body, it can be turned into a harmless goo, but otherwise it can easily kill you. So don't go around touching my things, would you? The Half smirked. Perhaps it was one of the features that separated him from the rest of the ghosts. Danny may have had his reservations about free electric currents, but that was honestly where it ended. Usually ghosts went ballistic when faced with the reminder of their deaths, be it an object or a person, and they would never speak so freely of the moment their lives came to their end. Danny himself had by then largely dealt with the fact, especially since he got away relatively scot-free. He was still at least a partial human being. After what you just told us, I don't think I'll go anywhere near that glowing stuff, Mina shivered. Yeah, man, Kirishima muttered. That's a messed up way of discovering your quirk. You don't hear me complaining now, Danny smirked. The one time was more than enough. Your quirk is still amazing, Fenton-san, Midoriya spoke. You can definitely become a famous pro. The Halfer rubbed the back of his neck. Thank you, Midoriya-san. I know bakugou won't be very popular, Sue added. What the hell? You want to fight? The teen in question yelled from the backseat. And that's exactly why, the frog girl pointed out. Yeah, we haven't known each other for that long, but everyone knows his personality is crap steeped in sewage, Kaminari added. Now, Danny grinned. No need for such vulgarities, Kaminari-san. He surprised everyone with his stance. But you are 100% right. Shut up, spook. Enough of that, interrupted Aizawa. We're here. Soon the bus came to a halt, and the entirety of the class exited it. They were now near a colossal dome structure, able to fit an entire town inside from the seams. A peculiar person was waiting for them in front of the entrance. Danny hadn't seen that staff member before. That person was dressed in yellow boots and a white jacket, so puffy that it was impossible to understand who exactly was under it and how to address them. The pitch-black helmet with white eyes did not make it any easier. However, the first phrase quickly put at least some questions to rest. Everyone, I have been waiting for you, the feminine voice sounded from under the helmet. Whoa, I know who that is, Midoriya squealed. Michelin girl, Danny offered sarcastically. WH.no, it's the space hero, 13. A hero who has saved thousands of people from disasters. Oh, I know her too, Uraraka said just as excitedly. Let us go in without delay, 13 told the students. As they went inside, Danny couldn't help but chuckle. That name sure brought some memories. The place, unsurprisingly, was as big on the inside as it was outside. The first association many students had was an amusement park. To that conclusion they were led by the long, wide paths crossing in the center of the area, where a large decorative fountain stood. However, the metaphorical attractions in the R were quite intriguing. There was an area that was a collapsed, the ruined cityscape. Somewhere at a distance was a smaller glass dome, under which everyone could see the blazing inferno. And nearby, there was a dome that contained a snowstorm within. A model shipwreck could also be seen from the elevated platform the entrance, and the students currently were. Once again, everyone could only marvel at the scale UA operated at. Everything you see before you, 13 spoke up, is a training ground I made with all different types of accidents in mind. This is the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, USJ, for short. By the way, 13, Aizawa said to the riled-up colleague. Where is Allmight? He was supposed to be here. About that, the hero in spacesuit reduced her voice to a whisper. The whisper she hadn't known the Halfa could easily overhear. It looks like he did too much hero work on his way here and ran out of time. He is currently resting in the lounge. Time? Upon hearing this, the Halfa blinked. What did time have anything to do with Allmight performing his hero duties? Danny began to wonder if the man's quirk could work only for a limited amount of time. Whatever was the reason, he was secretly happy and also concerned about Allmight staying behind. The villain's tool was aimed at killing the hero who was currently absent, so he wasn't in danger's way. However, the lack of the world's strongest hero was going to severely undermine the combat chances of his side. That was awfully irrational of him, Aizawa sighed. Let's start then. Alright, let's see. Now I have 3 some things to tell you first. 13 began. As I'm sure you are aware, my quirk is black hole. It can suck inside everything and turn it into dust. Midoriya and Uraraka nodded quickly and excitedly. You've used this power to save so many. Indeed I have. However, this quirk can also easily kill people. Some of your quirks, too, are very destructive, aren't they? In a superhuman society such as ours, quirks have been registered and stringently regulated. At first glance, there doesn't seem to be any problem here. I can name a few, Danny mumbled quietly. However, you must not forget what I just told you. A single misstep can end up with killing an innocent person. Aizawa-san's physical test helped you find out a couple of your own hidden powers. All Might's personal training helped you understand the danger of your quirks when used against another person. This class is a fresh start that can teach you yet another aspect, using your quirk to save countless lives. And I hope that you are willing to listen and understand what I'm trying to teach you. That will be all. At this, 13 bowed theatrically, under the loud applause from many students. Danny would have said something, too, but then a gust of cold air escaped the half-his mouth, and that feeling, unique to each ghost or other spectral entity, was very much familiar. Kirishima, who stood by the teen's side, looked surprised at seeing his friend tense up in alarm. "Danny-san, what are you?" The halfer rushed forward to the edge of the platform, and his ghost sense, much to his woe, was right, just as it always had been. And then, right in front of the distant fountain, a portal emerged, and its purple hue was unmistakable. Tirajiri was here, and with him, the striking force of cutthroats ready to engage in battle. The Haffa threw a meaningful look at Aizawa that could easily be translated to, "I told you." The air was heavy with tension. Tirajiri's body and the portal all in one form expanded to an immense size, and the first to step out was the seemingly fragile, lean form of Shigaraki. He was not the only person, certainly, for he was soon followed by a small army of villains, and Danny could recognize some of them from that meeting in the warehouse. And their number was alarming, because there was actually a lot of criminals. The gears in Phantom's head began to spin as he dug in the bag he had been carrying the whole time. A bag with school supplies and his own gadgets, a heavy load, but something he could carry with ease. The tools had not gone anywhere. He was ready to face the biggest headache of the whole villain team. The most polite threat, he had to add. Is this part of the training, Aizawa-sensei?" asked Kirishima. "Doesn't look like it," Danny responded instead. "If only we could have anticipated this," he added dramatically. "Your tongue will kill you one day," Aizawa growled, putting on the strange goggles that more resembled a part of a helmet, covering the entire upper half of his face. The teacher had no time to argue with a student who could not read the room for the life of him. "Those are real villains," he spoke to the students. The reaction of the teenagers was that of shock, and that shock in turn gave birth to a specific brand of initial fright. The trespassing was the work of these scumbags, after all. Danny wished to make another remark, but realized that his ever-confident attitude was not going to help anyone at the time. Furthermore, his ice-blue eyes caught something of interest. Near Shigaraki stood a colossal figure about 5 meters tall. The macabre creature had purple skin and an absolutely ripped body build. Danny knew one thing: that beast did not look human at all. Its eyes were devoid of any sentience, its brain was open to every wind in the world, and its beak looked like a crooked smile. Perhaps that was the tool Shigaraki had mentioned. "Teacher," Yaoyorozu spoke up, talking to 13. "What about the sensors all around the school?" "We have them, but..." "They up and teleported inside and bypassed them all," Danny realized. "But did they teleport only here or all around the school?" asked Todoroki. The Haffa wished to tell them that their goal here, the whole stealing the schedule thing, was solely for avoiding that many heroes and concentrating the effort on All Might, who, by miraculous chance, was not present there at the time. However, Danny still had to reassure his classmates somehow. "I doubt the latter," he said. "Think of it. They know All Might is at the school. I don't think they will split up knowing that the strongest hero is around. And for some reason, I think that thing," he pointed at the purple monstrosity, "is here for a reason. Maybe, but we don't know who they could send there," responded Todoroki. "Either way, the alarm is not going off. This area is also isolated, while a class of students is present here during the lesson. They are far from being fools." He arrived to the same conclusion Danny had reached, and the rest of the class remained even more distressed. Aizawa was the first to start giving orders. 13. Evacuate the students. Try contacting the school and learn the status. Kaminari, this means you, too. "Yes, sir," responded Kaminari and began fiddling with his headphones. "Are you going in there by yourself?" Danny asked the teacher. Aizawa did not respond, and everyone realized his answer. "But with that many, even if you erase their quirks," Midoriya spoke. "Eraserhead style is shutting off the opponent's quirk and capturing them. But sensei, the frontal assault like this, you can't be a hero with just one trick," answered Aizawa. "And Fenton, I know what you are thinking, and my answer is the same as during the last conversation. You can't be serious." Danny gritted his teeth, before in the edge of his eye he saw his classmates once more. And then he remembered about the responsibility he had. Why he was so worried about that day from the start. "I'm leaving this to you, 13, said Aizawa, before finally running forward. And even from such a distance every student could witness the man skillfully dispatch one villain after another. However, Phantom had no illusions. Eraserhead would tire himself out against such an army. He wasn't trying to win, he was buying time. The time for the students to evacuate. Come, students, quickly, 13 said, leading the teens in the direction of the exit. Whoa, Aizawa-sensei can hold against so many people at once. Midoriya had been lagging behind the rest, his curiosity having got the better of him. Don't lag behind, Midoriya. Danny called out for him. Dock it out, teacher, later. Right. The entire class was running towards the entrance as fast as they could. But the desire for the school to make everything enormous was playing a cruel joke on them, in the form of a lengthy path to the exit. And then, eventually, a portal appeared on the ground in front of them. From the hole sprung Kirigiri's ethereal body. I won't let you. 13 instinctively shielded the students from the villain who so far was yet to attack. Danny was not in the front row, slowly digging inside his bag for the required device. Nice to meet you. Kirigiri continued as politely as always. We are the League of Villains. It may be presumptuous of us, but we have invited ourselves into the House of Heroes, UA High School, in order to make All Might take his last breath. He should have been here, in fact. Was there a last notice change? Doesn't matter. I will still play my part. As he spoke, the dark fog grew in size and intensity as he was visibly readying for an attack. Danny started charging a blast with his free hand, but he was beaten to it by two of his classmates. Kirishima and Bakugou were the first to lunge at the villain and strike him. The latter's explosion created a dust cloud that encompassed everyone around. Huh, didn't you think you'll get beaten by us before you did it? Kirishima exclaimed teasingly. Oh dear, that really is dangerous. The dust cloud slowly dissipated, and from Kirigiri's yellow slits for eyes that became much slimmer, everyone could see that he was getting excited. Albeit you are still students, you are nonetheless a treasure. My job is to scatter you all and torture you to death. The fog suddenly exploded, expanding at a rapid pace, a second later already enveloping the entire group. The gusts of wind made several people buckle their feet from the pressure. Ida was not one of them, but before he could do anything, he felt a hand grab his shoulder before he was pulled forward and out of the fog. The next second he blinked, seeing that he, alongside Mina, had been pulled outside by their class representative, who by then had assumed his ghostly persona. Ida, Danny's echoing voice commanded over the noise of the wind. Yes, the bespectacled deputy turned from the fog and on Phantom. While the fog machine is distracted, make a mad dash to the door. I'll give you the room. Go warn the teachers and do so quickly. Got it. Roger that. Ida made an honor sign before turning towards the doors. At that second, he lunged forward and started running. Mina, Danny turned to the stunned pink-skinned girl. We will make Sue the bastard has his hands full. But how? See those metal bracers under his eyes. He pointed at one of the spots of the purple dome Kirigiri had created. Soon Mina noticed them as well. Even if you miss them, I bet the bastard will be more careful and slow. Use your acid. I got it. Mina nodded, before smirking. I'm glad you chose to try out this outfit. Danny briefly glanced at his vigilante-like costume and smirked too, before nodding to Ida. The deputy rushed towards the exit while he still could, and Kirigiri immediately came to notice the attempt. Where do you think you are, Arg? He suddenly received a blast in the face. His yellow eyes turned to the source of his pain. He could see Danny with his hand outstretched, covered in faint green smoke. You talk too much, pal, the half spoke and smirked. And I don't like anyone with a bigger mouth than mine. A futile attempt. Ida, who had been actively looking behind his shoulder, at the last second noticed a portal opening in front of him. He barely managed to dodge and run past it. The next instant, Kirigiri himself teleported in front of Ida in his entirety. The three students looked where the fog had been just before, and saw that the rest of the class was gone. What have you done to them? Phantom exclaimed, his toxic green eyes glowing even brighter. I took the liberty and scattered your friends across the entire facility, alongside some of our associates. Will they survive till the end, I wonder? You freak, Nina exclaimed. You will not get away with it. And who is going to stop me? You. With all due respect, I believe we are of a different caliber. Danny rewarded the villain with a malicious grin, the one that Kirigiri felt like he had seen somewhere before. Come to think of it, there was some resemblance. You are just a pretentious sentient fart, he responded, as the device on his right glove began to glow and whir. It was a device that looked similar to the one that limited his energy output, but it was larger, bulkier, and more sophisticated. I beat the likes of you when I couldn't even keep my body parts tangible. With tools like this, he raised his hand. Behold, the next step in ecto-engineering, Project Totem. The next second, with a loud sound and a blinding flash, the small device created a powerful, bright torrent, which, for some reason, did not disturb even the dust on the ground. The only thing pulled inside such small contraption was Kurogiri, and out of surprise he could not properly react, as the fog was being sucked inside the aptly named totem, somehow still fitting inside. Like it, Danny shouted over the noise the machine was making. The second you entered this building I felt your presence. Unfortunately for you, generations of my family dedicated their lives to capturing the likes of you. Every trace of ectoenergy is mercilessly sucked inside the improvised modification of my parents' toy. That was oddly specific and general at the same time. Both other students realized. Kurogiri initially panicked, for he was not someone who engaged in direct confrontations. The device that was seemingly tailored purposely against him did not help the matter. That could not be a simple coincidence. The only saving grace was his still full stamina that allowed him to resist the pull at the best of his ability. Phantom had specifically employed a special tactic in the past. He tired the ghosts out first, something he had no time to try at the moment. Even so, the fog was being devoured by the device already. "Ida," Danny shouted. "Why are you still here?" The deputy snapped out of his marvel at the class rep's technical skills and foresight. "I got it. Hold on, I'll bring help." Ida rushed to the exit once more. Kurogiri's eyes turned to the speedster, and he wanted to create a portal once more, but he could feel it. No energy of his could leave the cone of light and pseudo-gravitational pull. Each his attempt was met with a reciprocal force. His fog could not escape, and he had already lost enough to reveal the metal bracers once more. "Nina." Danny turned to the pink-haired girl, still holding Kurogiri pinned with his device. "Now is the time." Nina saw the gray metal gleam from under the remaining wisps of black fog and immediately realized what Phantom meant. "On it," she responded as her palms began to secrete the transparent, gooey acid. Kurogiri immediately realized what the girl was about to do. Those kids realized his other weakness from the get-go. Oh, they were good. Nina fearlessly lunged forward, and it was that fearlessness that failed her. The girl had to shorten her distance, and the villain made no moves to somehow dodge the stream of acid thrown his way. But the bracers indeed moved further and out of reach. It made Mina confident enough to step into the torrent totem was creating, harmless to her human self, just as Kurogiri expected. Before Mina's eyes materialized, a portal formed out of the same energy totem was mercilessly sucking in. Thus, the portal itself moved towards Phantom, but Mina easily dodged it. She immediately launched more acid, and some of it managed to hit the target. The corrosive goo ate away at the bracer, making Kurogiri hiss. However, Mina had no time to triumph as she into the consequent portal opened beneath her feet. In the first portal that was heading towards the half-ghost, the girl, maintaining the inertia, flew straight into her classmate. The surprised teen hero had to catch Mina that slammed into him, and that led to the grip on Kurogiri being loosened enough. The villain exchanged no pleasantries and vanished from sight. "That sneaky bastard," Danny muttered, realizing that he was still holding Mina in his hands. "You all right?" Yes," the girl quickly exclaimed and jumped to the ground. "What should we do next, Danny-kun?" The half glanced downstairs and a plan was hatching in his head. Kurogiri is the main problem here. As long as he sticks around, the villains have a chance at escaping. We have to take him out first or this will all be for nothing. Mina blinked. Had that villain mentioned his name? She might have missed it, but now she knew. "But how can we do that?" she asked. "We would have to pass through the whole army of villains. These are nothing I can't handle. Aizawa is strong, but they themselves don't look like much. But I think you should do something else instead." "What do you mean?" Kurogiri said that our classmates are scattered all around the place, and we don't know if they are all right. Danny raised his arm, and his bag flew right into the hand. He dug inside one of the compartments and dug out several walkie-talkies, courtesy of meticulous Fenton engineering, putting one into his ear, and immediately tossing the rest of them to surprised Mina. "Here, my little artisan toy. We have to stay in touch. After you help the first group, split up again to cover more ground and aid the rest. Each of the groups has to have someone with a communicator. Tell me about major developments." "Gee, Danny-kun, you prepared for everything." "That's our family motto, always be prepared that your day will go to shit," Danny grinned. In the meantime, Kurogiri re-emerged by Shigaraki's side, which surprised the other villain. "I thought you were preventing the escape," he hissed. "I'm sorry, Shigaraki-sama. I scattered most of them, but one managed to escape." Shigaraki noticed that Kurogiri appeared battered, if one was to apply such term to the body such as his. The fog was less intense, here and there it would even be see-through. The ringleader scratched his neck with one hand, then the second joined in. Red marks emerged where his fingers ravaged the skin. "Kurogiri, if not for your warp gate, I would have killed you myself." "How did you fail that child?" Kurogiri squinted his eyes as he looked at the platform where two teen heroes stood. He has the device to counter me specifically. Aizawa heard what had been said as he dodged another strike from a low-rank villain. He couldn't resist a small smirk. That kid. The next attack forced the hero make distance from the two villains in charge. Counter you? How is that possible? Shigaraki asked. Did the heroes know they would be coming? All Might was not there. Their escape was almost cut off. It could not be a coincidence. No, everyone appeared to be completely caught unaware, for the exception of one person. How did he know you will be here? As he kept his red eyes focused on the half-ghost, a sudden realization struck both villains. That white hair, green eyes, and the ever-mocking tone could belong to only one person they knew. That cheater. This appearance and voice are unmistakable, Kurogiri concluded. He knew we will be coming because we ourselves told him. It was Sensei's suggestion, Shigaraki muttered. So all this time Pariah was a student. A smirk crossed his chapped lips. That was his chance to get back at the teen that had angered him before. Which means I get to kill him here and now. Shigaraki-sama, we must leave urgently. We cannot prevail against dozens of heroes. I am not leaving until I choke him to death. Phantom and Mina quickly reached the bottom of the stairs, as the former had easily grabbed the girl's hand and flew to the bottom. Without leaving the nearest villain the time to blink, he landed right on the man's hand, smashing it into the ground. Then he let go of Mina as she quickly dashed towards the collapsed cityscape, splashing the ground beneath another villain with acid, melting it and making him stuck. Ironic, they both thought. It really was rescue training, albeit of the different kind. From his musings, Phantom was interrupted by a groan beneath him, before he realized that his white boot was currently on a villain's face. Oh, totally forgot about you, Danny said, before knocking the man out with a swift kick and hopping on the ground. And before him was another small group of villains, getting ready to assault him. Pretty stupid of you to come down here, boy, said a lean man with a forked tongue. Should have just run off while you still could. A thuggish-looking woman fist pumped. Danny shrugged, as his eyes turned blue. Can't even bother to rebut this cliché stuff. The man lunged forward first, brandishing his claws. Danny easily dodged to the side, as a rod of ice appeared in his hand, to be swung a moment after into the enemy's face. The momentum met the opposing force, resulting in the opponent beaten in a second. The next villain did not hesitate to shorten the distance, and Phantom tossed the rod into the woman's face. She raised her hand to block it and succeeded, but the shielded eyes were the eyes that did not see the Haffa coming up to her face and delivering an uppercut that threw her in the air, followed by a point-blank blast that launched the villain away. Told you, Danny smirked, blowing stark white hair from his own eyes. He turned towards the vicious fighting that Eraserhead was involved in and did not hesitate to take it to the air. Before he could do anything, the Haffa saw multiple tentacles heading his way. One of them got a hold of his leg, but the Haffa only grinned. He spun in the air, pulling the very owner of those tentacles around, making the man tumble into the villains around like a ragdoll. Finally, Phantom grabbed the tentacle and pulled with all his strength. The villain flew towards the Haffa and was met by an elbow kick to the jaw, before being grabbed and thrown back on the ground and into another group of villains. With a loud and excited laughter, the Haffa struck again. His hair began to float as he charged a powerful blast with his hands. A moment later, from his palms emerged a laser that scorched the very earth below the villains, but was slow and easy to dodge. The abysmal speed lured the criminals into security, but then the ground began to explode in the places hit by the emerald-colored beam. The Haffa swiftly landed back on the ground, not letting Eraserhead out of sight. Danny ran forward and towards him as the wisps of cold air danced around his fingertips. The villains who had the misfortune of being nearby were rendered helpless by the ice that emerged from the ground, either because it had grabbed them in an inescapable grasp, or the force of the suddenly emerging icy, dull spikes was enough to launch them into the air. Hey, teach, Danny called, before with a swipe of his hand and telekinesis he forced the flying enemies to push them back on the ground. What are you doing here, Fenton? Aizawa asked, knocking out another henchman. I ordered you to evacuate. So do you want me to stop holding back or do you want me away? Make up your mind, responded Danny with sarcasm, charging another blast. In the meantime, Mina made it to the collapsed cityscape, the closest area to the entrance. She met little resistance along the way, as everyone was too busy fighting either the two heroes in the center of the facility, or was too busy subduing the divided students. If she was honest with herself, the girl was not sure if she could pull off the given task the way she was now. Acid was not something go to when rescue operation was involved. Mina could melt the debris, but she could not be completely certain that her quirk would not cause an unnecessary harm. If her acid could burn through metal, what's there to say about human flesh and bones? They had only been a small while into their studies. Why did it have to happen so soon? Mina stopped herself from going into a rant, instead becoming all ears. The cityscape was big, so she needed some pointers still. Eventually, she saw how inside one of the buildings loud explosions shattered the remaining windows, letting out the inferno. It could only be done by one person. Out of everyone it has to be bakugou, Mina mumbled, before quickly counting the floors. The girl ran inside the building, swiftly reaching the floor just below where the fighting took place. She probably shouldn't have engaged in a battle directly at the moment. What's with flimsy building and bakugou's explosives obliterating everything in their wake? Instead, her palms produced more acid, which she splashed onto the support beams. The transparent goo ate away at the steel before the moribund structure gave up and the upper floor largely collapsed. And the surprised screams of the criminals filled the air as they fell on the floor right before her. At that point, Mina realized she hadn't thought of a next step, as the villains slowly started getting up. Rarg, from the upper floor jumped Kirishima, who landed on and punched one of the criminals in the face with all the strength and weight of his hardened body. Kirishima-kun, Mina-san, Kirishima exclaimed in surprise. Have you been here all this time? No, Danny-kun got me and Ida-kun out. Pay attention, kids, one of the bandits exclaimed, preparing an electric charge. Die. A massive explosion came from above, and Kirishima quickly stood in front of Mina, shielding her from dust and pieces of debris. Bakugou jumped below, his vicious look daring the cutthroats to get up once more. The hell are you doing here? The blonde barked at Mina. Danny-kun told me to come and help the classmates. He also asked that we go and help the rest. That spook ain't gonna order me around. Besides, the rest can handle themselves against this garbage. But if that fog bastard is still around, they're gonna escape like nothing happened. Mina and Kirishima blinked and stared at him. What? That's surprisingly reasonable of you, Mina commented. Shut up, raccoon eyes. Danny-kun said the same thing, added the girl. He's even brought a vacuum thing that can easily suck that villain inside. He managed to escape at the last second, but his energy must be seriously drained after this. But Ida made it through and is going to bring help. Bakugou's right red eye ticked. That's why we are coming, too. I think we should trust the class rep on this one, said Kirishima. I mean, he looks like he knows what he is doing, and he is also the strongest of us all. We can't know for sure if the others can manage as well as we did, though. Yeah, and then we can beat the remaining villains together, Mina said excitedly and fist pumped. Whatever, Bakugou huffed. I ain't wasting my time. Do it yourself. The blonde turned to leave, eager to join the main battle. He would not let that annoying spook get ahead of him and get all the spoils. And as Bakugou left, Mina handed her friend another Fenton-tailored walkie-talkie. Wait, he drew his logo on these things? Kirishima asked and cackled. Mina looked at the tiny DP logo drawn on them and giggled, too. Danny may have denied it, but he certainly had some love for himself. His friends also did not know how his pride compared to his father's. They would share their friend's outlook, otherwise. He really thought of everything, though, so no complaints from me. Mina grinned, before pressing a button. Danny-kun. A loud scream of an unknown person came from the headphone. Yes? Danny asked. Sorry about the bones, pal, he spoke to his victim. I found Kirishima-kun and Bakugou. The walking bomb is coming your way, but we will keep searching for others. Figures. Danny grinned on his end, turning intangible and avoiding a gunshot. Good job, everyone. Keep going and be careful. After dropping the call, the Haffa turned his undivided attention to the villains around him. He didn't want to explicitly display his plan, so the offense was not as quick as he would have liked. If Kurogiri knew for certain he would be coming for him, the villain would easily avoid him now that the portal maker was aware of Phantom's second original creation, with the first being Blast Power Regulator, although perhaps it didn't take an Einstein to figure his aim. Not only him or Bakugou, who would soon make an entrance, but Aizawa as well knew which villain was the most problematic and had to be dealt with first. Shigaraki, in the meantime, grew sick of sitting idle. The crowd of villains was melting by the second. Allmight was nowhere to be seen, and their time was running short due to the escaped speedster. It had to be over and done with quickly before the reinforcements came. And the ringleader saw how the heroes were coming closer and closer, and his eyes were focused on the half-ghost he had come to hate so quickly. Furthermore, the boy's device was a major threat to their plan. That insolent cheater had to die first. Danny, who froze the nearest opponent up to his head, was about to go further. But the man with a shark head appeared to have realized something. Wait a second, you are pariah, he exclaimed, and was met with a calm, neutral look which clearly hid a murderous intent inside. The man gulped and felt how his mouth did not want to open. Phantom had expected such an outcome, so the best he could do for now was to make them shut up. The half-ghost raised his hand and swung it, and a single slap was enough to knock the man out. The problem was dealt with, but how many of those he had downed actually recognized him? He could not possibly know that, but there were far more pressing issues at the moment, and one such issue under the name of Shigaraki was rapidly approaching him. For someone so seemingly frail, he possessed an impressive speed, which he used to reduce the distance. Phantom readied his fist, assuming the proper stance, and once the villain got close, his ectoplasm-engulfed arm impacted the man's head. Phantom had not put enough force into the strike, perhaps too careful not to decimate the enemy's weak body. Shigaraki had used this to stay where he was by grabbing onto the Hafa's arm. It was a strange, four-fingered grip. The gaunt man cackled quietly. "You tricked us, pariah. Or whatever your actual name is," he whispered hatefully. "I don't like that. So you know," Danny gave a small smirk, albeit he was far from happy about such development. "You don't know who you are messing with. One day you will see that this area is too high level for you. That is if you live long enough." Finally, Shigaraki lowered his thumb. In an instant, they both saw how the Hafa's arm was covered in cracks, bit by bit crumbling like the old layer of paint. When the initial shock wore off, Danny phased out of the villain's grasp and flew backwards a couple of feet away. So that was the man's ability. Whatever he touched was reduced to bits. "I will turn you into dust, you cheater," Shigaraki said, about to lunge again. But then, an explosion hit the ground the ringleader stood on, forcing him to dodge and jump back. "Huh, not so tough now, huh?" Danny looked to the side and saw that Bakugou was looking at and talking to him. The Hafa took a look at his hand, and it was a very ugly sight. Up to his neck the clothes were destroyed, and Danny felt constant stabbing pain due to having his skin disintegrated by Shigaraki's quirk. The process itself, surprisingly, had been painless, but now he was biting his lip to hide his pain. The green, glowing insides of his arm up to the shoulders were seen to all around. And it went without saying that the totem was turned to dust as well. Shigaraki must have really wanted him dead. "Cannot even beat that wimp by yourself, huh, Fenton?" Danny hissed. "Not gonna lie, that quirk is annoying," he chuckled. "Thanks for the save, I suppose. You'd better. Now get lost, because I ain't saving you again." "That won't be needed," Danny said, channeling the energy to the wounded parts. "You better listen to your friend," Shigaraki called out, "because the next time will be your last." Danny smirked, before everyone witnessed the Hafa's wounds rapidly healing. In a few seconds the skin was already back, and even the hoodie he wore was as good as new. Phantom's healing factor was a blessing. His ghost half could sustain and heal the injuries fatal to a human being. But now the Hafa felt nauseous and ready to vomit. Too much energy coursed through his body at once without release. Yes, that was not something he would do often. He also noticed something strange. Danny's hand that used to wear the totem had flickered with tiny streams of purple as the tiny wisps danced around his fingertips. "What in the world?" he muttered. "No, no, no," Shigaraki exclaimed, scratching his neck rapidly. "You cheater," he yelled. "Sheesh, someone must be a sore loser," Danny chuckled, before checking out his healed arm. "You broke my prototype, jerk." The implications of that, however, were grave. The destroyed tool was the only one he had at the moment. The thermos was still in the bag he had left hundreds of meters away, where he couldn't reach at a time like this. "I haven't lost yet," responded the ringleader. "There's still something you forgot about, didn't you?" At the last second, the Hafa noticed the hulking monstrosity that was coming towards them at a speed few humans could even detect. With supernatural reaction of his own, he pushed Bakugou out of the striking range of the beast, before meeting the fist with another punch. The force of the impact forced everyone in the close vicinity to lose their footing. But the two opponents remained standing, glaring daggers at each other. "Jesus, you are even uglier from this distance," Danny muttered, but received no verbal response from the purple monster. "He blocked the Nomu," Shigaraki mumbled furiously. "It was supposed to overpower All Might." Danny was too focused on the beast to hear what Shigaraki was saying. Bakugou did not hesitate to discharge several explosions right into the monster's face. The creature turned its prolonged head towards the student, but did not seem to be affected by them. Fully understanding the physical resistance of his enemy, Phantom used the distraction to deliver a powerful blow with all the strength he could muster, discharging ectoenergy in the process. Once more, the dust was flung into the air, and only Nomu did not even budge, even after the strength of a train was applied through a single strike. That monster absorbed the entire force behind the blow and shrugged it off. A Hafa dodged the next lightning fast attack, and then another. The creature was as quick as it was strong, but its bulk was not allowing him to be as agile as the nimble half-ghost. "Berg, back off," he exclaimed, before sliding under another hit and grabbing the creature's leg. The next second, he pulled on it, forcing the unprepared enemy on the ground. Using a hefty amount of strength, Phantom threw the enormous body at a large distance, and as it flew, he finally had some breathing room. Stay with Aizawa, Bakugou. He needs help, he ordered, before bursting forward, leaving only dust behind. Gritting his teeth at being commanded by that spook again, Bakugou nonetheless conceded. The situation had quickly turned dire, and the only hope was that Fenton could at least hold that thing off until the reinforcements arrived. Until then, Bakugou would have to fight the lowest cut of the invading force, and also Kurogiri, who now didn't need to hide from Fenton's infernal contraption. Those bastards were not making it out in one piece. The spot Fenton had launched Nomu was the avalanche area, and the impact was hard enough to shatter many rocks at the landing point. The beast quickly recovered and met the upcoming strike by simply raising its arm. Another hit shattered the rocks around them even further, pushing the beast deeper into the hole it made. Once again the creature with an ever-present vicious grin shrugged off the damage and attempted to punch the half-ghost. Phantom turned intangible to dodge, but immediately dropped it to pummel the beast's head, exploiting the opening. But that thing shrugged every hit off, absorbing the strikes like a sponge. Danny jumped away from another strike, softly landing on the ground. He needed a plan. Brute force wasn't cutting it. That thing could withstand all might, and that guy could push away the clouds by punching the air. His ghostly strength wasn't enough. Maybe this thing's quirk was absorption or something akin to that. He would just be wasting all his energy while that guy did not tire an inch. The Halfa couldn't help but huff out a single laugh. That must have been the first fight he was actually struggling with since coming to that world. Think, Fenton, he told himself, this guy should have fought All Might. Does that mean? Then, he turned towards a foreign, sudden source of sound and saw his classmates finishing off the villains remaining in that area. Among them were Kirishima and Mina. They noticed him as well, but neither reacted, because the half-ghost couldn't catch a breather. Not that he breathed. Phantom jumped into the air, away from the beast's reach, but then it grabbed a massive rock, broke off the piece larger than Nomu itself, before swinging and hurling it right at the Halfa. Danny turned intangible, giving it a deadpan look. The monster was not the smartest one. He doesn't stand a chance, Shigaraki cackled. Nomu was built to withstand any damage dealt to him. He then saw the two heroes heading for him. Fortunately for him, Kurogiri came to his rescue and cut off their path. My duty is to protect Shigaraki, the living fog declared, and I shall see it to the end. Less talking, more fighting, you fart. You are so derivative in your remarks, children. He easily conjured more portals that absorbed the explosions and teleported them elsewhere. He tried to whisk away Bakugou as well, but the blonde managed to dodge. He was about to create another one when he saw the teen rapidly approach him, but then the portal vanished right after appearing. His yellow glowing eyes turned towards Aizawa. He had shut off the villain's quirk. With the army of cutthroats depleted, the gate opener was at a major disadvantage. He barely managed to dodge the strike on his own. Shigaraki-sama, he turned to the ringleader. We need Nomu here and now, or we can. I'm not leaving without that bastard's head. Shigaraki cut him off and pressed on the earpiece. Nomu, come to us immediately, he ordered. Danny was surprised when the monster suddenly decided to forget about him, instead turning towards the central area. He immediately realized that whatever the reason, Nomu could not be allowed to join his leader. As the beast made a powerful leap forward, the Halfa followed it. Right above the monster, Danny tried to catch up in time, but he knew he would not be there in time. He needed that bastard fighting him and him alone. He needed it right before him. Phantom felt a sting in his hand, seeing the thin purple wisp again materialize around it, and it wanted to be released. Your fight is with me, he bellowed. And then, a purple portal emerged right in front of the descending beast. Unable to stop, it flew right into it, and the other end of the gate was open right above the half-ghost. Danny looked up, before charging a powerful blast and hitting the beast dead on. The scorching laser hit even the dome ceiling, revealing the blue sky above it. Shigaraki looked at Kurogiri in fury. Kurogiri, what in the world are you doing? He yelled. Shigaraki-sama, the villain spoke slowly, without looking away from the Halfa, as his expression was that of shock. It wasn't me. Even the heroes stopped in their tracks. That Phantom just replicated the villain's quirk, and Shigaraki was probably shocked the most. Danny himself was in shock from that power, but he had quickly realized the parallels. With one particular weather-controlling ghost, he absorbed my fog. Kurogiri realized. When you destroyed his device, it did not come back to me. But you still have your quirk, concluded Shigaraki. Maybe because he hasn't fully taken it. That would explain his arsenal and power. Is it anything like Master's? Aizawa heard what the villain said, and in his heart the concern grew. They seemed to have their own alarmingly sound logic. Phantom in the meantime did not even let the beast land. The initial blast brought the result he had desired to see, the entire front of Nomu being scorched. He was already seeing it heal, but the proof was before him. It could be damaged, as long as it wasn't brute force. Danny burst even higher as an ice blade appeared in his hand. He swiped his other palm along it, leaving it covered in ectoplasm. Flying close, the half-ghost made a massive slash with a loud roar, before punching the beast into the chin to keep it helpless and suspended in the air. The monster writhed and let out a chilling shriek, in pain at having its whole arm seared and burned by ectoplasm. Its blood smeared the half's face. Phantom pressed the assault, hitting Nomu right where a gaping wound was left. The monster tried to grab him, but the half-ghost was too quick and natural in the air. Danny dodged and kicked the beast down into another portal, before throwing his blade upwards. Nomu came from the portal above, and was immediately met by the sword impaling his chest and going right through it. Phantom grabbed the monster's neck when it came close and grinned. "I can get used to this," he said as his eyes flashed brighter. But then, the beast did something unexpected. With all its might, it snapped its jaw on the half-ghost's hand. "Argh!" Phantom yelled, unconsciously letting go of the grip. He examined his arm that had gone through a lot during the fight. That bastard had chomped out a half of the flesh on his forearm. Nonetheless, Danny smirked. "Very poor choice of diet," he whispered. Nomu could feel it, but lacked the capacity for thought to act upon the pain growing in its throat and stomach. The ectoplasm was gnawing on its insides. Still, the beast stuck the landing, ending up right between the heroes and the two villains in charge of the operation. "Couldn't even keep it tied, spook," Bakugou exclaimed as Phantom slowly landed near them. "Bakugou." Danny turned to him. "Shut up already. Are you alright, sensei?" "I'm fine. Focus on the fight." Aizawa had not turned his mentor role for a second. "You are full of surprises, heroes," Shigaraki said. "But this is pointless." The heroes could see how Nomu stood up. And then, in a matter of seconds, it grew back the entirety of its severed arm. "Nomu may be dumb and docile, but they will do as we say. And always live to see it through," Shigaraki commented. As the man finished his bravado, everyone could hear a laughter. It was Phantom's. Under the surprised gazes, the half-ghost stepped forward, his mocking grin threatening to split his face in two. Aizawa tried to stop him, but Danny raised his hand and thus told him to trust his judgment. "What are you laughing about?" Shigaraki exclaimed furiously. "You picked the words that are a music to my ears. You gave me an idea, something I should have done from the start." "Go ahead then." The Haffa opened his arms wide, not even bothering to shield himself in any way. "Send your dim toy at me. This will prove to be amusing." Kurogiri could not push away the idea that the boy resembled his master in more ways than one. Everything from his looks and mannerisms to the quirk he possessed was something similar in Kurogiri's eyes. Shigaraki was too preoccupied with the desire to murder everyone present to care enough. He loudly ordered Nomu to attack, not believing that the boy had anything powerful enough up in his sleeve. The beast lunged forward, not showing any signs of exhaustion, as fast as it did so at the start of their fight. Bakugou and Aizawa immediately jumped away, and the second before the punch impacted Phantom's head, a fanged grin flashed on his face. The next instant, he vanished. What followed was a bizarre scene, where Nomu suddenly screeched and grabbed its head. The beast went completely berserk, thrashing around and causing damage to the ground it relentlessly destroyed in the process. Nobody could understand what was happening, and the heroes had to find a way through the unpredictable rampant monster. But Shigaraki fearlessly, or perhaps foolishly, chose to approach it. "Nomu," he shouted, "stop this at once." And it did as instructed, stopping in its tracks. Shigaraki smirked. "There, that wasn't so." And then Nomu swung his hand and hit the ringleader hard enough to send him flying away. "Shigaraki-sama," Kurogiri exclaimed, teleporting towards him. "What in the world?" "I have an answer." Phantom's disembodied voice was coming from Nomu. Its mouth did not move, but its beady eyes glowed the same way Danny's did, with the same vibrant emerald color. "You see, possession is one of my little tricks. When I learned of the beast's docile nature, I realized that it will not resist. It took a while to get accustomed to this beast's body, however." Kurogiri watched this in further shock, and even heroes who had not known about that power of his could only stare. So Danny spoke. "I suppose this is a game over for you. I'll make sure to shut the lights on my way out." Kurogiri looked at Shigaraki, who was slowly getting up. "Shigaraki-sama, our plan is completely compromised. We have to leave." The gaunt man glared at Nomu's body, overtaken by Phantom's indomitable will. He hated that bastard. He hated him. He wanted him dead. He began to scratch his neck again, in a futile attempt to calm himself. But there was no denying their defeat. Phantom had been ahead of them. He had tricked them, and his power was versatile enough to take down their strongest Nomu. Shigaraki watched the beast fall down on the ground, completely unconscious, with the triumphant half-ghost standing on its back. That's what he meant by shutting the lights, shutting down brain activity when exiting the possessed body. The cheater mocked him, and the burning rage within Shigaraki was nigh impossible to suppress. The ringleader wanted to come at him and fight further, but at last the entrance doors burst open, revealing the school's staff. The hero's arrival, and All Might in particular, the one who made his way to the battle the fastest, marked the final defeat of the villains. Danny, however, did not notice. Once again opening his arms wide, he exclaimed, "Thank you truly for this amusing farce." And at that All Might froze in his track. The laughter of the blood-smeared half-ghost made his and everyone's blood go cold even more. Kurogiri no longer waited for permission. He created a portal, and, feeling the green blast scorch his incorporeal body, still whisked away before anyone else could react. Silence settled across the area, before the grinning Halfa looked at the newest arrivals. "Hey, guys," he panted, shifting into his human form. "Took you a while. Are you all right, young Fenton?" asked the symbol of peace. "Huh? Oh, that." He pointed at the bloodstains in his hair and on his face. "It's this thing's," he said, and lightly kicked the unconscious monster's head. "I'm all right, sir." At that moment, seeing the destruction around, All Might realized that Tsukachi's words were far more truthful than he had thought. And Aizawa was unknowingly agreeing with the man, and recalling the words of his friend. The kid really was a monster. Somewhere around midnight, in one particular town in Illinois, the people of one particular district were woken up by a loud screeching noise. The otherworldly creature, with a rough, stereotypical ghostly shape, was the one that interrupted the good people's sleep. The glow of its red, beady eyes was only rivaled by the luminescence of its pearly white skin, and it screeched due to the pain it endured after receiving a blast into the face, hitting the nearest wall. Somewhere by its side, a girl helped her friend get up to his feet. Both were teenagers. The former had pale skin, raven hair tied in a high bun, and striking lilac eyes, also dressed in a dark gothic outfit. On her wrist she had a miniature blaster, whose silvery build and green markings indicated its Fenton origins. Her friend was an African American in a yellow sweater, who quickly scooped up his scarlet beret as he got up. He had been rendered weaponless by the rampant ghost that had pushed the blaster out of his reach. Luckily, the two of them had some assistance. "Thanks for the save, Val," said the boy, Tucker. The gratitude was addressed towards the figure that floated above them, rising a flying board. Clad in a scarlet high-tech armor, Valerie held a smoking bazooka-like weapon. "It has hit the Spectre hard. Have to keep you rookies alive." The girl smirked under her helmet. "Who are you calling rookies?" asked Tucker in dismay, as everyone heard the ghost roar once more. "Geez, it just won't go down," muttered Sam and fired from her wrist blaster. This time, with its supernatural speed, the ghost dodged and lunged towards the two. Sam and Tucker barely managed to dodge, and Valerie's barrage of emerald green shots kept it distracted enough to let the two take a breather. Tucker dug in his small bag and unfolded a metal rod that turned into a staff. With a weak exclamation, the teen boy hit the specter on the head, but to no effect. The ghost turned towards him and growled, salivating. "Oh, crud." But then, Valerie switched the mode of her gun and fired a glowing green net that covered the ghost in an instant, pinning it to the ground. "Danny made it look so easy," Tucker exclaimed. "You forgot to turn it on," responded Sam. Tucker saw a small switch and flipped it, before the staff sparkled with otherworldly electricity. The next second he hit the downed enemy and zapped it, earning another chilling scream. The hit drained a large amount of the beast's power. The next second Sam took out the famed Fenton thermos and turned it on, sucking the specter inside. And once the lid was put back on, the girl could finally sigh in relief as the threat to their life was kept deep inside a reliable contraption. It was the third one they had caught that night, and it was probably the high time they went to their homes. "Well, that does it." Tucker smirked and pulled out his PDA. Tapping with his stylus a couple of times, he checked out another district. "Shouldn't you two be asleep right now?" asked Valerie as she stepped on the ground and took off the helmet, revealing a chocolate-skinned girl their age. "Same goes for you," Sam huffed. "Does your dad know you snuck out?" "What he doesn't know won't harm him. We could always use the extra money, as long as your consciousness is clear after working for Masters," the goth girl rebutted and shrugged. The notorious mayor of Amity Park was a person that many people couldn't remember why they voted for. Still, many chose to flow with it, for the man was rich, not shy of investing into the town himself and thus granting many jobs, and also quite charismatic and charming. However, Danny and his friends knew who in reality that man was and how much danger he posed to everyone's well-being. Valerie, however, remained oblivious to the truth, with Sam and Tucker being unable to change her views without revealing things that could endanger them in return. "He pays me for keeping it all together. Danny is hell knows where, and someone has to do this. He left because he needed a break. You were a part of the problem. Two girls glared daggers at each other, and Tucker sensed that he needed to ease the tension somehow. He said he forgave me, Valerie mumbled, and I didn't hunt him anymore. Hey, girls, let's not argue right now. We all are tired, it's getting too late. Shut up. Tucker, Valerie, and Sam both directed their anger at the boy. Of course, hate the messenger of peace, Tucker shrugged, looking at the place where the ghost used to lie. Sheesh, at least those aren't as tough. Come to think of it, Sam mumbled. Ever since Danny left, we haven't had any ghosts stronger than the 3rd level. So Wolf was right, asked Tucker. Right about what? Valerie raised an eyebrow. He suspected that the high-level ghosts are coming after Danny only. It's been over a month and we never saw any. But why would they do that? Asked the curly-haired girl in worry. For everything that had been between them, the ghost boy was still someone who had a special place in her heart. Wouldn't you like to know? Retorted Sam, who held no liking for the huntress in red, also due to everything that had been between her and Fenton. Ghosts live by the right of the strongest. And try to guess who is the one after the Ghost King was beaten. Valerie's eyes widened. But doesn't that mean that wherever Danny is, they are going to track him down? Sam and Tucker exchanged glances. We hope not, he hid well enough. You could just tell me where he is. Is this because of Vlad again? Valerie suddenly realized. Well, we know Masters is after him just as everyone else, Tucker explained. The last person Danny needs to see now is that Fruit Loop. And he is your boss, so it ain't happening. We are sorry, Val. We could ask him to call you, but don't expect much. The huntress smiled. This will do for now. You know I'm not asking this because of my boss. I care about him as much as both of you. Whatever, Sam rolled her eyes. But thanks for the help, I suppose. I'm always there to assist. The huntress smirked and flew off on her board. Sam felt Tucker tapping her on the shoulder, and the two of them turned to leave. The night was serene and quiet on that day. The two friends didn't talk for the large part of the way, each consumed by the pressing thoughts. It was not the same without the half-ghost. In a way, Danny was the cheerful glue that held Sam and Tucker, the two polar opposites, together. They were still best friends, no doubt, but they both felt like something had been missing. Yet, they knew they couldn't exploit their friend like this, keep him bound to them against his will and perhaps his best interests. From the calls they received, he was happy living in that new world, and either was happy for him. It wouldn't hurt for them to meet in flesh sometime in the future. It didn't take long for the students and some teachers to gather together after the fight. And albeit the newly arrived staff was dying to get some answers as to what had transpired, there were admittedly far more important issues at hand. With how many villains there were, someone had to call the police to detain that small army. The students that had gathered outside were eagerly discussing each of their respective fights. Danny himself stood by them, sitting on the body of the downed purple beast. He didn't know why he had carried Nomu there, but it would be difficult to transport anyhow and someone had to do that. Let it be the very Slayer. Furthermore, if it woke up, someone had to keep watch just in case. Keeping it together, kid. The surprised Halfa looked to his side and saw his guardian clad in his coat standing there. Tsukachi blinked in shock at seeing the dry blood on the teen's face, but Danny didn't seem to be at all bothered by it. He would have to take a shower first, though. Hey, old man. Fenton greeted him with a grin. What are you doing here? Realizing what he had meant, the detective responded. I am often called on such cases. Even if there is nothing to be uncovered yet, the man winked. With how many villains there were, we needed every officer and car in close vicinity. You haven't answered, though. I'm fine. Those idiots didn't know who they were dealing with. Danny shrugged. As confident as ever, I see, Tsukakui mumbled. Hey, I took down the Frankenstein that was supposed to kill All Might. Give me some credit, Grandpa. The detective stared first at his charge, then at the monster underneath him. He would question the teen later, but at the moment there were other things to do. Everyone, please gather round. I need to check if everyone is all right, he said and fished out the list. The man quickly did the head count, before nodding. Everyone seems to have gotten away with only a couple of minor injuries. Those are good news. Fenton-san had his arm bitten off, Midoriya blurted out. Tsukachi glanced back and saw how Danny wriggled his fingers with a grin. That's some amazing healing he had. The green-haired teen continued with excitement. How far can you take it? Got run over by a roller coaster once. Recovered from being a pile of goo, Phantom shrugged again. So I'd say pretty far as long as I am a ghost. And again the whole class, and even Tsukachi turned pale. What kind of life have you had, man? Asked Kirishima. It's been one wild year. In fact, it entailed a slain god, multiple nigh-death experiences, time and space travels, and the all-country race against a maniac with a reality-bending gauntlet. You are just full of shit, spook, Bakugou exclaimed. You just come up with this stuff on the go. Careful there, Goldilocks, Danny's eyes flashed as he smirked. Or I will possess you, too. Bakugou instinctively took half a step back, and then Danny got a light slap across the back of his head. Don't threaten your classmates, Danny, Tsukachi said nonchalantly. But did you say possess? He took over this monster's body, Kiro, Tsu commented. It was scary and off-putting. Come on, guys, it was a joke, Danny moaned. I don't possess people close to me. I sense a lie. Daniel, the detective said sternly, still coming to terms with his charge having yet another terrifying power. Losing control of your fortress, your own body, was always a chilling thought. I don't anymore, Danny clarified. It was harmless back then, too. This time he spoke the truth. You didn't tell me you could do that. I said I have the powers of a ghost. It's even in my registry, Phantom shrugged. Why shouldn't I be able to take over someone's body? Tsukachi sighed. That kid kept stunning him more and more with each passing day. But if he really hadn't done anything with the power more suited for a villain, he had the detective's trust still. In any case, Tsukachi said, if everyone is all right, I believe you should return to your classrooms. We don't intend to interrogate you. Yeah, Kirishima cackled. You've got plenty of people to ask. Danny looked at the line of villains embarking on the less than pleasant buses with iron bars. He recalled the words one of them had said. They knew who he was under the guise, and it took only 1 out of 100 to spill the beans. The Haffa could only hope that they had more pressing issues than uncovering someone who might as well have been a double agent all along. Isn't every teacher currently in there, though? Phantom asked, not diverting his eyes from the soon-to-be prisoners. They are. Well, I should go and see them. Then, the detective took off his felt hat. And Danny, you should go and take shower. Oh, brother, I wanted to keep the smelly blood in my hair, the Haffa responded sarcastically. Don't worry about this guy, he tapped on Nomu's head. Bin in his head, absolutely empty. He won't resist without being given command by his boss. Tsukachi nodded to his subordinate to confirm if the latter he had heard everything correctly. Then, as the students went for the bus, eagerly chatting about how everything transpired, the detective went towards the building. He made a glance towards the class and smiled lightly. Danny seemed to be the center of attention, and in a good way, too. As his guardian, Tsukachi couldn't help but be pleased with the development. He had been immensely surprised by the fact that Danny of all people had been elected a class rep. Proud, yet baffled. But seeing how popular he was among his peers, it didn't seem that out of place. Tsukachi merely wished to see that side of his charge more often. The side that was evidently there. He made his way inside, instantly bearing witness to the destruction of the place. Though not critical, it wasn't subtle at all. No attempts to remove the debris were made just yet, but some heroes were busy looking for the remaining criminals. Near the entrance, several heroes had grouped together, accompanied by the principal himself. The small mouse creature noticed the newcomer and smiled. Ah, Detective Tsukachi. You are quick as always. Thank you. Tsukachi smiled, before his look turned serious. Have you found anything of note yet? There wasn't much to find, responded Midnight. But the defense systems are clearly in need of certain improvements, added Nezu. Tsukachi nodded. It will be the most logical step. I'd like to ask for your permission to investigate every corner of the school to be on the safe side. Of course, the principal said cheerfully. You and the police are certainly better at this. Well, I will leave it to you, then. If you need me, I'll always be in my office. At that, the heroes slowly took their leave. All but one. Tsukachi started looking for his close friend, only to find the gargantuan and usually flamboyant man sitting on one of the benches, with thin layers of smoke coming off his body. Somewhat confused, the detective chose to approach All Might, who immediately noticed his presence. Tsukachi-san, the hero greeted. It's good to see you. Likewise, Toshinori-san. The detective nodded, before with a big puff the giant was reduced to the gaunt and skeleton-thin shape. There seems to be something on your mind. Is something wrong? Toshinori stared at his friend. Perhaps it was for the better that it was Tsukachi who came to talk. It's about your kid. Oh? The detective raised an eyebrow and sat near him. What about Danny? Can you be confident about young Fenton's backstory? I asked him direct questions. Where he is from? What's his family like? I witnessed him calling his sister. Tsukachi counted. All in all, I don't really have any doubts about it. But why do you ask? When I looked at him just now, I only saw him. At first Tsukachi hadn't grasped what the hero meant, but he wouldn't have been a detective if he hadn't been able to understand what All Might meant. And his choice of words, this farce. I've had this whole phrase itched at the back of my brain. He said it just before Nana was murdered. And now this boy comes, looking like his splitting image, minus the eyes, saying such things. I am ashamed that I even suspect a probably innocent child of this, but I cannot help it. It's just a phrase, Toshinori-san. That is why it pains me to even consider this. But there is more. Tsukachi-san, All Might looked up. He stole a villain's quirk. Tsukachi's eyes widened in shock. Are you sure of that? Aizawa told me. During the fight, he harnessed the power of one of the villain's leaders and used it against the beast. He didn't take it completely, the criminal still had it in the end. But now young Fenton possesses it, too. I wanted to ask you for something, my friend. At Tsukachi's nod, All Might continued. I don't wish to come off as too prying. Could you, perhaps, ask for the principles behind this ability? It could just be a similar one, not something deriving from it. You are now willing to assume their relation, Tsukachi concluded. I don't think this is the case. Danny is a kind soul, and he spent his life away from Japan. Have you ever asked him how he knows Japanese? Tsukachi froze for a moment. Come to think of it, he had never asked about the boy's impeccable language skills. I never have, actually, he mumbled thoughtfully. But at this point, I won't be surprised that it is another ability of his quirk. I wouldn't jump to conclusions. The detective stood up. A simple conversation even with someone like him should suffice. That's easy to say for someone with a lie-detecting quirk. All Might chuckled. You are most certainly correct. And what would you do if your suspicions prove to be correct? All Might's look became confident. Then we will have all the more stimulus to guide him on the right path. I have seen young Fenton in action and I have seen him near his classmates. He gets carried away when given free rein, but as long as there is someone else nearby he is always watchful and protective of his friends. I can sense the kind heart, but as I said, I also sense too many parallels and occasionally something malicious breaks through. All for One has been defeated, but I saw his brief reflection within young Fenton. If this child truly is his, we can't allow his heritage to take hold over such a promising hero. I see what you mean. That's what I am here for, Tsukachi smiled. I'm sure that as long as he has someone to rely on, Danny won't stray from the hero path. But when left to his devices, he got tangled up with the wrong company, and was not afraid to challenge the law and bend it. That's the problem. You may be correct, my friend, but I don't think you should deny your charge the agency like this. He is a stubborn child. I would certainly know, sighed Tsukachi. There's also the reaction of others if Danny is All for One's son. I'm certain his friends will realize that young Fenton is his own person. And besides, they don't know who he is. I don't mean them, the detective responded slowly. The HPSC, the blonde hero mumbled grimly. I see where you are coming from. The Safety Commission always tries to keep tabs on the strongest heroes, and especially dangerous cases, added Tsukachi, a son of the most dangerous villain in Japan's history, already defeating a monster that was supposed to kill you. But to be honest, the greatest concern to me is the backlash. Danny doesn't take kindly to restrictions, and I fear that he may react too brazenly to even more of them being imposed on him. Do you fear he will go rogue? I suspect so, and I just know Danny is not going to listen to me when it comes to that. So he is, to an extent, a ticking bomb. I can only hope that his new duties will rid him of those selfish ideas. Selfish, huh? All Might mumbled. That's what his friend's unshakable stance was, it appeared. That condescension is not going to lead to anything good. You know what I want to know, Danny-kun? Asked Mina as they rode back to the school. The Haffer raised an eyebrow. What? How did you learn to make portals like that? The girl inquired excitedly. As everyone turned into ears, the Haffer looked at his palm before the purple fog came back. You heard what I told the guy. He uses the same energy I do, and this means I can absorb and utilize it. This already happened before. I used to control the weather, Danny grinned. But it worked very haphazardly, as they for some reason attached to my emotions. Each time I got angry, everyone would see thunder and lightning. It would rain when I am sad, and so on. In the end, I returned it, not on my own accord, but I was still glad to get rid of this dangerous stuff. I wonder what limits I have this time. Phantom's friends of ghostly kind, especially those knowledgeable in the subject, had explained the situation to him pretty simply. Each unique power of a ghost was dictated by their obsessions. Danny's, however, meant protecting others. It was so general and unspecific that his core had interpreted it as the need to acquire as much power as possible to survive and aid others. It adapted and absorbed unique ghostly energies when they came into contact. However, that entailed being hit by those, something Danny wasn't happy to try. That's amazing. Danny could swear he was seeing stars in Midoriya's eyes as he wrote that stuff down. This means that your adaptability is hardly matched by anyone, and each fight will just make you stronger. Fenton looked away. He still felt uncomfortable at getting such praises. Not every fight, only against someone like our little fog machine. I can't learn yours or, say, Kirishima's. Danny pointed at his friend. That's more than enough, man. Kirishima rolled his eyes. I'm more surprised by the tools you had. Which reminds me, Danny made a grubby gesture. Begrudgingly, his friends returned the headphones. Once they were back in his bag, the half-a chuckled. Not gonna take the credit. The design ain't mine. I just copied them from what my parents had made. And what about that thing the hand villain destroyed? Asked Maita. Shigaraki is his name, I think. Danny pretended to be in thought. It is a modification of what my parents came up with and dumped it because the thing refused to work. It's supposed to absorb the ectoplasmic energy and store it inside. I came up with a brilliant idea. Alright, it was totally by accident that I can fuel the device with my own energy. What I had back then is a more comfortable device. Doesn't take as much space, doesn't dangle on your belt. Now I'll have to make another one, the half aside dramatically. My allowance isn't that big, damn it. But how did you know to bring it now, Kiro? Sue tilted her head. Danny kept smiling, but on the inside he was rapidly trying to come up with an excuse. I don't leave my house without my gadgets, something I was taught since my childhood and what I advise you guys to do as well. Huh, like I wouldn't need any of that shit. Bakugou barked a laugh. You run around with your toys, spook. I wouldn't underestimate old Fenton's, Danny spoke. He sounded sincere, albeit any warmth was non-existent in his words. They once made a suit that I borrowed. It increased my power by 10 times, but came with a downside of slowly killing me through the destruction of my nervous system. Later that downside was removed and my sister almost killed me. And she is quirkless. Why would you and your sister even fight? Kirishima asked. We had an argument back then. I don't think she was trying to kill, rather venting some frustration with me. But man, that ectoskeleton is something else. She probably didn't even realize the strength she was putting into her hits. Danny-kun, asked Mina. Detective Tsukachi is your guardian, right? What? Asked Midoriya. Oh, that's cool. Midoriya. Ida hissed into his ear. You know what that means, don't you? A look of realization crossed the boy's features as he visibly panicked. I didn't mean to. The tension vanished as Danny let out a laugh. That's fine, pal. Each member of my family is still very much alive, if that's what you are asking, Mina. But they kicked me out of our home, so here I am, he shrugged. A heavy silence hung around their part of the bus. Few could actually believe that Danny's own parents chose to get rid of someone like him. To most of them, the Halfa was a friendly guy, someone who could act responsible when need be and whose tremendous power hadn't gone to his head. They saw absolutely no reason for someone to just cast him aside like that. How are you so calm about this? Exclaimed Kirishima. I felt like shit. There was a lot of shouting, and my parents used the entirety of their vocabulary, composed entirely of diminutive synonyms of the word scum. But it happened months ago, no point in bitching about it. But I will definitely punch my father into the face next time we meet for what he said about me not being a child of theirs. His experience and knowledge of what damage grief could cause both to a person and the world around them rid him of the desire to wallow in his misery. He had to be stronger than that. It would be a lie to say that it wasn't causing him any pain still, but he was not going to let it overtake him and dictate his actions. You have one insane family, Fenton-san, Kaminari mumbled. Just don't cause an Armageddon because of that, he cackled. Danny's expression, however, turned perhaps too serious, which surprised everyone. Don't joke like that, he spoke. There's no way I'm going to do that. We know, Danny-kun, Mina scratched her temple. Why are you getting so anxious about it all of a sudden? Danny looked away. It's nothing, he was quick to dismiss the question. Talking about his grim, supposedly predestined fate was not something he wished to divulge. He hadn't even told them about his past as a hero, for reasons he himself wasn't sure of. Perhaps it was merely an atavism from his life built on lies that still lingered within him. But by refusing to share his life story with the people he had grown close to, wasn't he stepping on the same rake again? Danny pushed that depressing and pointless pondering, as always focusing on the present, and letting a smile on his face overtake him. There was no sense in looking inside himself when there were things that demanded his attention elsewhere, like a particular blonde hero trainee. The Halfa knew for certain that Ayama was to blame for the attack just as much as the people who were currently in less accommodating buses. He had a rectifying circumstance, certainly, but Danny couldn't simply let it slide. Ayama had been caught red-handed, stealing the documents the villains openly admitted to have used. The blonde knew the class rep was not stupid, and Danny now had a solid way of accusing him without giving away his own espionage effort. And the Halfa was quick to act. Once back at the school, when the students were taking their costumes off, putting them back into the cases, Ayama didn't wait for the rest, opting to return to the classroom alone. Unfortunately, the second he had stepped out of the changing room, he heard a loud cough behind him, and the blonde narcissist knew exactly who would have been waiting. Fenton-san, Ayama said nervously, is there something you need? Danny raised an eyebrow before smirking. Going somewhere, good pal? Yeah. To the classroom, the teen pointed down the corridor. Nobody would notice our little detour. Come with me. Danny stopped leaning against the wall. I'm sorry, but It was not a suggestion. Ayama, Danny's eyes flashed green. Me. The janitors. The blonde gulped. Mere seconds later he found himself in the small locked room, phased inside by one half ghost that meant business. So, Phantom spoke, his glowing eyes being the only source of light. Mind explaining yourself, Ayama-kun? I don't understand what you are talking about. Danny sighed. I catch you red-handed, stealing the timetable. Fast forward a couple of days and by coincidence the villains happen to have the knowledge of where a teacher should be. Couldn't help but see the pattern. Are you suspecting me of working for them? Danny leaned closer, and the radiance of the half-as glowing green orbs was sending shivers down the blonde's spine. I know you are, Ayama. Do you think I didn't tail you to that cafe on that day? He dropped a metaphorical bomb. Invisibly in the dark room, the hero trainee paled. There was no running away. Phantom had him cornered, both literally and figuratively. Please, Fenton-san, you can't tell anyone, Ayama begged. Your actions threaten your classmates, you dapper clown. They could have died if not for me stopping the Nomu. Luckily I came prepared, knowing full well about your plans in advance. Is that why I never saw you fight, Ayama? Were you hiding somewhere all this time? I had no choice. Ayama's voice shook, turning downright hysterical at points. Do you think I like it? Like stabbing everyone in the back? I know. Your family is being threatened, Danny sighed. Can't hope to fully understand your position. Of course you don't. The blonde suddenly snapped and pointed his finger at him. Yours threw you out. Phantom's eyes narrowed, and Ayama initially thought that he had made a grave mistake. He had seen what Fenton could do. He could even squash his head like a tomato if he wanted. But then Danny spoke up. Because they thought me to be a freak of nature, after I spent so much time protecting them and all others with the very power they hated me for. So yes, my experience is different from yours. That's why I want you to tell me your situation. Fenton-san. Ayama once again became meek. You don't want to get tangled in this. He is merciless and extremely powerful. I killed a god, Blondie. Whoever this guy is, I at least want to know. You already know everything you may need. I don't want to get in trouble. He is too secretive. I don't wish to resort to threats, Ayama, Danny said slowly and menacingly. I have nothing to say. I don't even know his name, but he has the power to take and give quirks. That's all I know. They only order me. I never get told any secrets. Take and give quirks, huh? Danny mumbled. That very concept spelled enormous power in a world such as that. There wasn't enough information to come by, and with the villains uncovering his identity, he couldn't hope to spy on them himself. All that effort to his it thrown right out the window. Who knew that the locals were smarter than the entire population of Amity Park? Yes, my family is indebted to that man. And if I don't do what he says or if I'm found out, he is going to do horrible things to them, Ayama whispered. Phantom sighed once more and rubbed his temples. Then I hope you listen to this plan. I'm not telling anyone about your involvement with them. But I want something from you, too. Oh, goodness, are you suggesting? I want you to tell me everything you come to learn. This is madness. If I'm found out, then make sure you aren't. Cliché response aside, you have to understand that this leech is not coming off even when everyone in this building is dead. Your only hope of saving your family from debt is helping to bring down that menace. And who is going to save them? You. Ayama asked. If need be. I know the adults ain't gonna do shit until we put the case before them on a silver platter. Aizawa ignored my warnings and we got into this mess. Is this supposed to convince me? Fenton, you aren't even a hero yet. This license thing is a joke. I already am a hero. Since we are uncovering secrets here, I used to be a vigilante, and I alone kept order in my danger-infested home. So if anyone can help you, Ayama, it is me. The guy who is not afraid to overstep some laws and act according to the situation. Taking the blame in the process. Ayama turned away. You are going to tell Aizawa-sensei if I don't agree. Danny's look turned heavy. Yours is one family, Ayama. I don't want the entirety of our class to die because of your actions, so I will have to. It is my duty as a class representative that you people have chosen and a friend. This attack shows that the bad guys aren't afraid of heroes, that they will only continue if something isn't done. Ayama let out a small and miserable laugh. I voted for you. Danny couldn't resist a small sad smile. Because you people were not allowed to vote for yourselves. I promise to do my best, and I plan on following this promise through. This includes you as much as everyone else at the moment. But again, if you refuse, you become a threat yourself. The blonde considered what had been said, but each train of thought always hit a brick wall. He simply had no choice on the matter. At least by doing as the class rep instructed, he stood some chance. Other choices would inevitably lead to him losing everything. It surprised Ayama how caring and at the same time ruinous Fenton appeared at the same time. His most powerful classmate could be either the saving grace or his death sentence. I'll try, Fenton-san. Just please, not a word to anyone. Danny smiled. I appreciate your trust, man. Your secret is safe with me. Just act the way you always do. But when the villains tell you to do something, inform me during the school time. You are the only spy here, right? Yes, I think. Then we will be discussing the course of action here. It will be safer this way. No phone calls or extra meetings in person. We shouldn't cross paths more than we absolutely have to. You follow? I got it. Ayama shakily nodded. In the toxic green light, the human boy saw an outstretched hand and a boastful smile. You didn't have to do this, Fenton-san. I know, but that's something I choose to do. We'll show that bastard not to mess with us, heroes. And Ayama, albeit hesitantly, took it. In an unknown location, in a typical villainous fashion, lurked an entire underground facility. Only a select number of individuals had knowledge of that place. Kurogiri was no stranger to the facility. That was where he came to be, after all. It was where many of his kin were being created. Kurogiri passed many tubes that contained the grotesque flesh mounds that were going to be given shape. Like a piece of wet clay, they were waiting for a master to work on them. Once again, the sentient fog paid no heed to the sights that would cause a normal person to think twice about proceeding further. There was a reason he was traversing normally, instead of simply teleporting to his destination. His master, despite being the one to bless him with his quirk, did not take kindly to him appearing out of nowhere by his side. The former valued his privacy and accepted visitors only when he himself willed it. Kurogiri could only obey, and, once summoned, he patiently traversed the facility by feet. Once he approached a seemingly inconspicuous door, Kurogiri knocked on it. Come in. A welcoming voice came from the inside, and Kurogiri entered. The room was dim, with the only source of light being a multitude of screens located at the far end. There was a chair, occupied by the owner of the whole facility, and the mastermind behind all operations. You wanted to see me, master? Asked Kurogiri. I did. The man responded with a cheerful voice, without turning away from the screens and towards his subordinate. Tamura isn't reaching out. How is he doing? He is. Disheartened by the catastrophic failure. Is he? Well, it's just no good, the man chuckled. A single mishap is no reason for refusing my calls, and I won't tolerate it. 2. Make sure to relay this. I will, master. Still, you know I am all for an eye-to-eye conversation. The villain laughed, ironizing at his own physical condition. I want to know more about what happened back there. Did All Might actually surpass Garaki's little creation? No. Kurogiri shamefully looked at the ground. He was slain by a student before All Might made his appearance. His master hummed. There was no anger that could be sensed by the sentient fog, and it indeed was a rare occurrence, if ever present. All for One was always collected, rational, and 2 steps ahead any of his adversaries. There was never a reason for him to feel anger. Is that so? He chuckled. Now that's a surprise. What can you tell me about that person? He tricked us. That boy is the very one you've laid your eyes on in the masquerade, master. All this time Pariah has been a double agent and a UA student. Then I was right in accessing the child's potential. I don't think he is a double agent. Heroes are never going to lower themselves to send a child into the lion's den, All for One mocked. But to think he will have the gall to cross us all on his own. That's something we won't forgive easily. And if he is smart, he won't return to the arena. You were saying he's as strong as All Might already. No, master. Nomu was defeated not by brute force. His attempts failed over and over until he subjugated Nomu by taking control over its mind. The room was filled by a loud laughter. I did tell Jiraki about this vulnerability. He assured me this won't be an issue. But wasn't the boy all about energy manipulation? Where did mind control come from? That's why I have a question for you, master, if you are willing to indulge it. I am listening. Could you, by any chance, have sired a child all those years ago? There was an uncomfortable pause. Slowly, the villain turned on his chair. The man was dressed in a usual formal suit. However, his face was anything but, covered in one whole scar tissue that hid his eyes and his mouth. It was difficult to make out his expression, but it had to have been something between curiosity and surprise at the sudden question. What has brought this up? Are you insinuating that that boy has a relation to me? This was merely a foolish suggestion on my part, master. I've seen his mannerisms and actions. He, just as you said, has set the whole operation and sabotaged ours all on his own. And he is also your mirror image, appearance-wise. Curious, but have you got anything more sufficient to make such claims? Master, he nearly stole my quirk. After this neither dropped a word for some time. But then All for One laughed again. And from this point onward I want all the details you can give. For several hours I couldn't use my quirk. The last drop of energy I had was used to escape. But that boy used my portal against Nomu with little care. He tried to entrap me within a device he had created specifically against me. But I managed to escape before the process was finished, and Shigaraki destroyed the contraption. What he had stored within, the boy absorbed. Most curious, the villain mastermind mumbled. I was looking for an explanation as to how our arena champion possesses so many abilities. If he has an all-for-one as well, it would explain everything. It would even be more potent than yours, master. To him, even an unfinished process can grant him a new quirk. And if he wishes, the original user can probably still hold on to theirs. An astute observation, Kurogiri. How I envy the young. The kingpin scratched his chin. I see why you are so eager to accept the notion. I must admit, the desires of the flesh are not foreign even to me. However, I've always believed myself to be incapable of siring a child. This changes quite a lot, if our speculation is correct. Does Tamura share your belief? He is too livid to consider this possibility, shall I say. A lot of furniture was destroyed during a fit of rage. The boy spoiled his entire plan, and Shigaraki feels nothing but hatred towards him. So any attempt to approach the child will meet his opposition. All for one concluded. But, all in due time, he grinned. We have to know more, and I know just the person for that. If I recall correctly, they are classmates. Kurogiri nodded. Shall I task him to uncover the information? That will be most useful. I shall patiently await the result. It's a shame we didn't get the chance to see Nomu fare against Allmight. Speaking of which, what's become of it? The news report that it was detained. Nomu cannot act on its own volition, so they had no difficulty taking it under watch. I sense worry in your words, Kurogiri. Don't fret. Even if the heroes discover what Nomu actually is, this hardly puts a strain on our plans. You knew this when you allowed Shigaraki to take one. Kurogiri asked in surprise. Certainly, as I said, he is free to try as much as his heart desires. However, it shouldn't endanger the grander scheme of things. We have to be prepared for unforeseen difficulties such as the current one. That boy displays a plethora of abilities, which means he has taken them from someone at some point. The villain smirked. Do his friends know of this, I wonder? What will you do with the information you already have? The boy still frequented the arena. Perhaps you may find use of that knowledge. We aren't the only ones to discover this part, are we? Many of the foot soldiers we've hired must have realized the identity of Pariah. And since the boy acts all on his own, he has no indulgence. How unbecomingly inconsiderate of him. Did he actually think a mask is going to fool anyone? All for one laughed. After how he tricked us all, I'd expect him to be smarter than that. A single leak may be ruinous to his whole life, Kurogiri concluded. That's why such a powerful leverage against him must be used in moderation. But there's no telling who might just spoil all the fun, unfortunately. I wish to wield this trump card alone, Kurogiri. Do whatever you can to minimize the impact. I'll provide the money for the expenses. Be sure to pass down a word that this leak won't be tolerated. You know that they will interpret everything as your patronage over him. Maybe that's precisely what I want. All for one smirked, turning back to the monitors. One door was shut before us yesterday, but so many lie open now. By the way, what about that wolf creature we found? The incident at USJ was a piece of news that was bound to make the headlines. After all, it had been a while since a group of villains this large attacked not just any place, but the citadel of the best heroes Japan had to offer. The following day the lessons were cancelled, much to the joy of one dannyphantom, who, for one, was thankful to the idiots for sacrificing their freedom to give him a well-deserved day off. He and his friends hung out in the city center, and each proudly watched the news broadcasted from the wide screens. It was them who stopped the villains, after all. That was a pleasant feeling. Danny did feel a bit disgruntled by the omission of the students' achievement, though. Yes, they were shown on TV. But the use of general terms like the heroes handled the situation rid him of that ego-inflating joy. Oh, cheer up, Ghosty, Kirishima said and nudged him. There'll be plenty of times when you get the credit. No need to get so sour. I am not sour, Danny shrugged. I know people are more concerned about the fact that the attack happened at all. But honestly, if UA students can handle this, it would have been a good advertisement if that part was talked about. Yeah, that was stupid of them. Mina grinned and cackled. What were the bad guys expecting, honestly? They wanted to use Nomu and kill All Might before tailing. You saw how it was, Danny pondered aloud. The thing ignored physical damage, and that's what All Might's quirk is about. But they were so focused on the goal that they neglected all other factors. Yeah, who could have known you'll pull out another broken card? Kirishima snorted and grinned. Fighting you is like playing a stupid Yu-Gi-Oh duel, man. Yeah. Get over it already. Danny smiled and lightly nudged his friend. But their short-sightedness is obvious. I mean, have you seen the mastermind of this whole show? Shigaraki is a petulant man-child, a moron, and a prideful one. Obviously he is not thinking rationally. Well, he must have some sort of charisma going. I mean, he got so many villains together. Danny's mind went back to the meeting he had attended. That was unlikely. The guy was completely unlikable and apathetic. And there was also a different knowledge that the Hafa had. I don't think so, but there is a chance that someone is backing them. Danny leaned against the railing, looking at the glass roof of the mall. They did mention some master. Won't put it past that person to have everything it takes to create this ragtag team. Money, influence, and the capabilities to create a bioengineered monster. Sheesh, he sounds like masters. Your godfather. Yep, Danny's lips thinned. Although the cheesehead is not the one to blame here, obviously. In any case, I think we can take a breather now. It's obvious they put a lot into this scheme, so it will take some time for them to come back for more. That's not a good reassurance, Mina deadpanned. You'll get used to it, the Hafa smirked. I learned to just accept things I have no power over. Best we can do is to get stronger. Truth be told, he held a certain degree of power over the events. He had a sensitive piece of knowledge that could potentially make a difference. He was acting in shadows to harm the villains' livelihoods. But it was still pointless in the grander scheme of things at the moment. Both sides made themselves known. Now it came to the data collection before they met again and fought. Phantom had no hope in the hero's help. It would certainly be welcome, but he had to make do with what he already had. That's how he always did it. Speaking of which, Mina rubbed the back of her neck. Danny-kun, can you make a portal to my home? Please. She made a begging sign. Are you leaving already? The Hafa raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I need to go back earlier today. My parents are still worried about what happened. I'd have liked to, Mina, Danny said slowly. But I got this power only yesterday, and in a very limited form. I practiced just a bit, but portals don't appear further than 5 meters away. Aw, man, this sucks, Mina pouted. You would have been able to even visit your American friends whenever you wanted, Danny-kun. The Hafa's eyes widened. That didn't seem as ludicrous as he could have thought. Of course, Mina did not know the extra obstacle standing in the way of that goal. The ever-present veil separating the worlds. Looking at his hand, the Hafa pondered on it just a little more. This sounds like a neat goal. It is, said Kirishima and grinned. Let that jerk's quirk be used for something actually useful. Alright, I'll see you guys tomorrow then. Mina saluted and strolled away, leaving the two boys alone. So, the redhead scratched his chin. Any idea what else we can do? Dunno. At this time I usually sit at home when I'm not with you guys. Come on, don't tell me our class rep is a hikikomori. Danny raised an eyebrow. Be sure to kick me when I start buying depraved figurines. I just never was a social guy before. My social circle pretty much ended with my 2 longtime friends. Is that because your quirk awakened so late? Nah, it's just, my parents are not just inventors. They are seen as nutcases, which they to some extent are. And hoo boy, if I didn't get bullied for my relation to the crazies that violate every single rule about adjacent constructions. You should have seen what monstrosity I lived in. I'm willing to raise my expectations. But hey, you are already the talk of the school, man. In a good way, Kirishima wrapped a hand around his friend's neck. Something he did quite a lot, actually. And with you being the class rep, you ain't going into any shell. I could have been a ghost in the shell, Danny grinned. Get it? Oh, of course you don't, he deadpanned. Sheesh, man. And not dumb, Kirishima huffed. I just don't know your American stuff. The irony of the statement was almost palpable. The following day the studies resumed. The rumor had it that the day before had been spent in patching the holes in security, looking for villains that had hid from the heroes and assessing if anything had been stolen. Those rumors came from different sources, but not necessarily contradicted each other. The journalists had swarmed near the front gates of the school, but Phantom, who, per luck, was traveling to UA alone that day, easily avoided them. He still couldn't forgive them the whole Inviso bill fiasco. Nonetheless, Danny made his way to the classroom, his enhanced hearing picking up the traces of conversation, where aforementioned rumors were being spread. He also caught occasional glances thrown his way, which was honestly to be expected. Danny was a part of the class that was the talk of the whole school. The second Danny opened the door, he was met face to face with Ida. Fenton-san, he bellowed. Morning homeroom is about to start, you should not be late. Danny blinked and looked at the wall clock. He still had some time to spare. Well, I am not late, am I? Fenton smiled, entering the room and seeing that he was the last student to arrive. I still have you, deputy, in case something happens to me along the way. Were you attacked? Ida immediately jumped to a conclusion. Danny's mind flashed towards a huge villain crushing into asphalt right before the bus he had been taking. and him cursing at Tsukachi for making him take one. No, the halfer responded and slowly floated to his seat. Morning, everyone. The two students took their seats just in time before the door to the classroom opened, revealing their homeroom teacher. Aizawa didn't leave the fight 2 days prior with no injuries whatsoever, having been forced to fight a small army all at once, and it was seen due to a number of bandaged parts all over his body and a slight limp. Recovery Girl had obviously decided to let his system handle what's left. Still, Danny had expected the man to take a couple of well-deserved more days off. He knew 13 did, but she was simply busy supervising the repairs of USJ, having left the debacle with little to no injuries. I see the relief on your faces, Aizawa spoke in his usual manner. I hope it is not because you think your fight is over yet. The tension in the air rose to insurmountable heights before he continued. UA Sports Festival is drawing near. A normal school event. Nearly the entire class exclaimed with joy and relief. Danny blinked. A tournament arc so soon. Way to break a cliché, Aizawa-sensei. He called. Is this alright to host a tournament so soon after the attack? A girl with short raven hair, Gyro beat him to the question. The villains did sneak in and can try and do so again. By going through with our plans, we will show that our crisis management system is as solid as a rock. Of course, we will increase the security by 5 times, Aizawa responded. Above all, the sports festival is an essential element of your education and future opportunities. It is not something we can cancel because of a villain attack. Danny felt at odds with what was going on. It made sense that it was as good time as any to show that UA remained solid. However, a sport event of all things really did come out of nowhere. He would have to ask more, because everyone seemed to understand what the event was, except for him. However, Aizawa unknowingly rushed to his rescue. It is one of Japan's biggest events. In the past, the Olympics were called a festival of sports and everyone was crazy about them. However, they are now a shell of their former glory. And now, the UA festival serves as a great replacement. A pretty strange replacement, Danny mumbled within Kirishima's ear reach. The whole world sent athletes to the Olympics. Now it's just one school. Quality over quantity, man, the redhead grinned. I never watched them, though. Danny scratched his temple and laughed nervously. What's in it for us? Aizawa-sensei mentioned its educational value. All top heroes around the country will be watching the festival, Yaoyorozu explained. Their agents are always there scouting for talents. Yep, Kaminari grinned and gave a thumbs up. It's a great way of becoming a sidekick to one of the pros. Many of them never escape that position. However, added Gyro unenthusiastically, they become eternal sidekicks and vanish into obscurity. Get used to the idea, Kaminari. You may just be dumb enough. The boy was taken aback by the straightforward dressing down. Of course, joining a famous hero agency is bound to give you experience and popularity from the get-go. Your time is limited. If you expect to become pros one day, this will be a good place to start. But remember that in these annual events you will have only 3 chances. No aspiring hero may allow themselves to miss it. If you understand what I am saying, don't slack off on your preparations. Class dismissed. And Fenton, you stay here. Danny gulped, not knowing what the teacher wanted from him just yet. As the unsuspecting students poured out of the classroom, with his friends promising to wait for him outside, Danny remained alone with the teacher. Aizawa gave him a neutral look in a complete silence before speaking up again. Despite you going against my orders on that day, you still performed quite admirably, Fenton, he said. Oh, thank you, I guess. I was just doing what I had. Doing what you wanted to do, isn't it? Aizawa raised an eyebrow. This time I'm not reprimanding you, so you can take a breath. And you have listened to my advice of giving it your all, so it's another pleasant development. You knew that the attack would happen, didn't you? Well, I admit, Danny looked away. I did suspect they will pull something like that off. And you also suspected that they will come on that very day at that exact time. Oh, I get it. You think I went against your word of not investigating everything myself. Danny crossed his hands. So you just happen to hold a weapon that can capture precisely one of the villains. I always had those on me, teach. That thermos I carry around. It's not just for holding soups. I've seen my share of bad guys that use the same energy I do. I learned how to counteract them. I just knew they will be useful at that moment. Aizawa sighed. I commend you for being prepared, then. I just want to make sure that you understand that nothing changed since our last talk, prohibitions-wise. Danny huffed and put a hand on his belt. This guy doesn't yet dare to hope. Neither me nor anyone else can make exceptions, kid. That's how we operate. We close our eyes once the whole system is rendered inutile. Even All Might back in the day adhered to such laws and rules. You guys share a hive mind or something. You keep drilling the same thing over and over. Because someone refuses to listen, Aizawa responded dryly. Patience, Fenton. I recommend that you do your best during the festival. This, and the subsequent internship, will let you try your hand at proper hero business. The half smirked. Not afraid I'll leave no chance to the rest. And he is back to his bratty self, Aizawa sighed half-heartedly. You can join your classmates. I always expect you kids to give it your all and more. Keep at it. Knowing his reluctance to give praises at that point, the Haffa took it as a compliment. With a smile, the Haffa left the classroom. Soon, after the last lesson before the lunchtime was over, the students could finally freely discuss what had been on their minds the whole morning, pushing away any desire to listen to lectures. "Oh, man, I'm so excited," Hiroshima exclaimed. "If we put a good show and stand out, we'll have taken the first step to become heroes. We cannot afford to miss this." Takoyami nodded in agreement. "Well, I certainly will not." Even Takoyami jumped at Fenton's sudden emergence, perhaps even more so than others. For some reason, the class rep triggered some instinctive fear within him whenever he was nearby. And since his instincts were tied to his shadow, it was mostly that very sentient quirk that was scared of him. He couldn't even fathom why. And why cold air came from Fenton's mouth each time Takoyami saw him. "Someone's excited," Zero grinned. Danny shrugged. "Well, the spoils are just flying into my mouth. What's not to be excited about?" He gave a toothy smirk. "Easy for you to say." Minta threw his hands around. "You can destroy districts with your shout." "A whale, to be precise," Danny clarified. "Don't worry, guys. I'll give you a chance." "Don't get so full of yourself, Danny-kun." Mina lightly slapped him on the back of his neck and went to her friends of girly kind. The boys laughed at the Haffa's misfortune. For all his power, he really let him push himself around sometimes. Danny grumbled something inaudible, staring at Mina's back. "Hey, Fenton-san," Zero said. "Do you have any hero agency in mind that you would have liked to go to?" "I don't know that many heroes." Danny rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't really follow the stuff." "But you are studying to be a hero." "Yeah, but I don't know where I'll work, still. So, I guess I'll just take the offer from the highest one on the list." "It is a logical course," Takoyami nodded. "The one reservation I have is that the whole world will know our quirks," Danny mumbled. "The villains will know them, too. They would have found that out when we debuted as heroes." Kirishima waved off his friend's paranoia. "But hey, your family will get to watch you." Danny was about to object, but then a light bulb lit up above his head. The Haffa looked at his palm. Only 5 meters. How thick was the veil? He wondered. That was something he was going to find out eventually. The lunch and the subsequent lesson contained little of note, albeit Danny and several others kept noticing odd glances. The teachers kept reiterating how important the festival was and stressed the need for preparations. That was something they all knew already. However, once the last lesson was adjourned, the students found themselves unable to leave the classroom, due to a huge crowd of students that had gathered right outside. What's going on?" Uraraka exclaimed in surprise. "What business do you have with 1A? asked Ida, beating the class rep to the same question. Danny really had to react quicker to such things. "What are you here for?" Minta demanded to know with a panicking undertone in his voice. "They are scouting out the enemy, small fry." Bakugou was surprisingly nonchalant as he was leaving the classroom. "We're the ones who defended against that villain attack. They want to check us out before the festival. There's no point in doing that." "Out of my way, extras." "That was awfully harsh of you." Number 2, the voice of Bakugou's most hated person in that room sounded from behind, making a tick mark appear on the blonde's head. Danny approached him with hands in his pockets, before looking at the crowd. His actions during the whole alarm at the cafeteria fiasco made pretty much everyone aware that he was the class rep. "What you guys are doing is rude and counterproductive. You don't seriously expect us to blow something up for your information." Danny smiled. "I, for one, came to see what famous 1 was like. But you seem pretty arrogant. Are all students from the hero course like that?" A tired-looking student made his way through the crowd and to the front. His purple hair was all out of place, and the bags under his eyes only added to the impression. "Wish I could say you are wrong." Danny shrugged, before rubbing the back of his head. "Seeing something like this makes me disillusioned. Some of us enrolled in general studies or other programs because they didn't make it into the hero course. Did you know that? The school left those of us a chance. Depending on the results of the festival, they'll consider our transfer into the hero course." "Pal, don't use we when talking about yourself." Danny crossed his hands. "Hero course is not made of rubber. You getting in means someone is shown the door." Aizawa neglected to mention this part. He turned to his classmates. He would hate to see any of them go, even number 2. He had too much fun poking at him, and he certainly was not exchanging them. "Scouting the enemy." The student huffed at Bakugou in his assumption. I, for one, came to say that even if you are in the hero course, if you get too carried away, we will lose, right? Danny interrupted and sighed. As if we didn't hear it from every teacher on the way here, he approached the student. You too should be wary, just as all of you. We all are here not because of pretty eyes or charming personality. I mean, look at this guy, he pointed at Bakugou. No, his eyes glowed. We are here because we have what it takes to beat a villain. I think the accident a couple of days ago should have proven just that. So far, it is you who should prove themselves, but if you people need extra convincing that we all are here on our own merits, then so be it. His own classmates were surprised to see Danny stand so firm, afraid that he was antagonizing everyone present, but also glad that the class rep had the guts to voice what everyone had on their minds. We will see, then, the purple-haired student nodded. I'm sure you will show everyone something else than diminutive vocabulary and your outstanding observation skills. Few people can determine what their opponents are like after giving them a 1-second glance, Danny said with sarcasm and a small smirk. Hey, hey, hey. Everyone's eyes turned towards the source. It was a student with long and shaggy gray hair with some extremely bushy eyelashes. His teeth were also notably sharp. Danny thought he recognized that guy from somewhere. Ain't you from 1B? He asked. Eh? How did you know? Saw you with Kendo, Danny grinned. How's she doing? Haven't talked to her since the last reps meeting. She's fine. That's not why I'm here. I heard how you fought villains, so I came here to hear about it. Don't get so full of yourself. We heard that the first time. The entirety of one shouted. Bakugou, however, said nothing, simply choosing to push his way through the crowd. Yes, leave it to him to try and antagonize the whole crowd and then decide to leave. He felt Danny's hand on his shoulder. What, you are just going away? The Haffa asked. You can show your other cheek all you want. Bakugou growled and pushed Danny's hand away. But their opinion won't matter as long as you rise to the top. With that, Bakugou decided to take his leave. As he left, the Haffa looked back at his classmates. That's Hiroshim's fist balled. So simple and manly, he whispered and shed a small tear. Danny's sweat dropped at this. While he himself somewhat shared Bakugou's opinion, he had a responsibility not to let the situation escalate. Even if the looks and occasional whispers he caught made him want to punch the most foul-mouthed. But he wouldn't, lest his classmates became pariahs for the rest of the school. As the argument broke between his classmates on whether or not he was right, the Haffa sighed and rubbed his nose. All right, show's over. We have business to attend to. You know, because we have to train. Because we are being responsible. The crowd slowly dispersed, and once they were gone, Danny deflated like a balloon, leaning against the wall, much to everyone's surprise. You all right, Danny-kun? Asked Mina. Jesus, I thought the anxiety is gone by now. He breathed out. Don't make me talk to crowds like that again. Fenton-san, you did it yourself, Kirishima pointed out, making the Haffa, who felt angry with his stupidity and hit the wall with his head. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author RusEmp on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video, till then goodbye.